Chapter 222. In the yellow gas. Other than the fox who had run away, the bodies of the 9 summoned beasts froze for a moment. Immediately after that, the first to change was Guan Guan, who had just returned from the blast. The pitiful chrysanthemum pig, who had just turned from purple to pink, changed again under the shroud of the stench. However, this time, the storm was even more violent. Guan's already huge body instantly increased in size and became even fatter. Immediately after, under the effect of the stench, Guan's eyes turned even darker black. He roared crazily and flew up with his huge ears. A circle of black air rose around his body. His huge body, out of nowhere, had his beast blood boil. Moreover, this time, it was even more terrifying. Kitty said in surprise, "Wow, it can't be the ultimate beast blood boil? That fart is really strong." It actually increased the strength of all the magical beasts within the range of the domain by 2 stages. All the demonic beasts had the same change. Apart from a jade-eyed dragon, their eyes had all turned black, and their bodies had all expanded. At the same time when Guan Guan launched his attack, they all used their strongest attack skills and rushed towards the 6 deities who had exploded their apertures. At this moment, the deities hated the fox with the obscene eyes to death. However, they no longer had the energy to look for the fox. At this moment, the fox was panting heavily in a corner. Although the fart just now was very satisfying, it also consumed a lot of energy. At this moment, the golden red fur on its body had become much dimmer. It was blinking its small eyes and looking obscenely at the magical beast that had entered a berserk state. The fox's fart domain was extremely powerful. As long as it covered the area it covered would move along with the movement of the magical beasts. Within this domain, all the magical beasts would enter a super berserk state, which was the increase of 2 stages that Kitty said. Although the duration was not very long, a magical beast that had suddenly increased by 2 stages was extremely terrifying. At the same time, the humans within this domain would be affected by the stench of the stench. This fox's fart domain was also one of the fox's strongest support skills. Although the domain could only last for a limited amount of time, the deities could only explode for a limited amount of time. Nian Bing, who was in the air, continued to cast spells to support Halogen and Oscar while watching Fox's actions. Fox's super powerful support domain also gave him a fright. At that moment, he finally understood. Among Kitty's many summoned beasts, the Real King turned out to be a vulgar-looking fox. Even the 6 true gods who had their acupoints exploded couldn't escape from the frenzy of the summoned beasts. Nian Bing understood that they could only protect themselves in a stalemate. If this continued, Kitty would very likely avenge her parents and clansmen with her own hands. Even if he wanted to challenge a kitty who had so many pets, he would not be able to do it alone. If he wanted to win, he would have to use despicable methods. Time passed by minute, second by second. Following the completion of Yuyu's 4th incantation, the red hexagram under her feet already erupted with an abnormally intense red light. Finally, she began to chant the 5th incantation. Although the true gods in the field were anxious, they couldn't do anything about the situation in front of them. Nian Bing, Halogen, Oscar, and Kitty's pets were entangled with the 9 true gods. Although the sacred teacher rushed into the undead army like a tiger in a flock of sheep, it was very difficult for him to rush out in a short time. Not to mention, beside Yuyu, there was Evil Moon, whose strength was above that of the sacred teacher. Evil Moon was also very surprised at this time. He didn't expect Nian Bing and the others to be so powerful. Those mysterious and overbearing magic arrows, coupled with their own strength. Evil Moon knew that the 2 sides that were fighting now were not people that his subordinates could deal with. Now he was gloating. With Nian Bing as a free labor, his chances of success were higher. "I am the maker of the crimson red flame fire. Here I beg you to break the covenant of the primordial forbidden covenant." The faint chanting suddenly became louder, and the speed of the chanting also became faster. The intonation was no longer as unpredictable, and every word was raised in high spirits. She opened her arms. The red ball of light, which had become the size of a palm, floated in front of his chest. The golden light from the 7 sealing bottles of Mordas had been dyed red and black, and the light that rushed into the sky was becoming more and more solid. The 7 bottles were constantly trembling and emitting buzzing sounds. Golden symbols were constantly revolving on the bottles. The incantation had entered another stage. On faintly used beautiful face, the holy aura had become even denser. At this time, a loud and clear dragon's roar sounded from afar. The dragon's roar was distant and loud, followed by 6 dragons' roars in succession. The 7 dragons' roars intertwined into a beautiful melody in the air. 7-colored light accompanied the dragon's roars from afar. 7 huge figures were approaching the ice valley at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. The dignified aura of the Dragon King made the atmosphere in the ice valley even more solemn. Dark Dragon King Kajios, who was entirely black with a faint golden light, led the other 6 Dragon Kings to finally arrive. The situation that was originally in favor of Nian Bing and Evil Moon became confusing again. Evil Moon's expression changed slightly. He knew that he could only rely on himself and his subordinates now. He was very clear about the strength of the 7 Dragon Kings. Because of the previous incident, both sides had already formed a blood feud. Would he be able to hold them off for long enough? Evil Moon's face showed a trace of coldness, and he raised his right hand. The zombie kings, vampires, and necromancers who had been guarding by his side moved in an orderly manner. The 7 Dragon Kings had finally arrived. Nian Bing was also in high spirits. Just like the situation at the front, his magic power and mental strength were weakened by a lot. Even if he cooperated with Halogen and Oscar, he could only fight to a draw with the 3 13th grade experts in front of him. He was naturally clear about the strength of the 7 Dragon Kings. Kajios must have reached the 13th grade, and the other 6 Dragon Kings were also at the 12th grade. In addition, dragons were born with strong bodies, selfless cooperation, and mysterious draconic magic. Their combined strength was definitely not inferior to the 10 gods in front of him. If the Dragon Kings insisted on destroying the seal this time, then the only ones who could resist them now were Evil Moon and his undead army. The flying speed of dragons was naturally extremely terrifying. In a short while, they arrived in the Ice Valley. The strong pressure brought by the 7 dragons immediately roused the spirits of the gods, and they launched a crazy counterattack. He even called out to the Dragon King to hurry up and deal with Yu, who was at the front. Nian Bing's left hand was ice, and her right hand was raging flames. Under the effect of Sigh of the Ice Goddess and Roar of the Fire God, these 2 forbidden spells of the 11th grade were unceasingly assisting Halogen in launching attacks. What they needed to do was to delay. Therefore, until now, Halogen had not launched his strongest attack. Seeing the arrival of the 7 Dragon Kings, Nian Bing calmly said, "Do you really want to do this?" Kajios looked at Nian Bing with a slight frown and said, "Then what about you? Have you really made your choice?" Nian Bing said without hesitation, "Yes, I have made my choice. Moreover, I firmly believe that my choice is correct. You have your own mission. If you want to fight, then do it. Right now, we are fighting for our own beliefs." The 7 rays of light suddenly converged, and the 7 Dragon Kings in the air transformed into their human forms. A rare smile appeared on Kajios' face. "All right, since you have made your choice, then let us fight for our own beliefs." Saying so, he waved his right hand. Immediately after, the 7 Dragon Kings did not even look at the 3 gods that were fighting Nian Bing, Oscar, and Halogen, and rushed down with their compatriots. One sacred teacher might not be enough to cause the undead army to collapse, but with the addition of the Light Dragon King Demanteti and the other 6 Dragon Kings, the undead army suddenly became as fragile as paper. As soon as the 7 Dragon Kings fell into the Ice Valley, they transformed back into their original forms. Immediately after, they began to sweep through like a whirlwind. The zombies were poisonous, and their attack and defense were not bad, but the Dragon Kings directly ignored them. They did not even look at the zombies' attacks, and casually turned them into pieces. As for the poison on the zombies, with their ability, could they break through the Dragon King's defensive dragon aura and thick dragon scales? Obviously, the answer is uncertain. In this surging wave of attacks, the undead army on the outside suddenly decreased rapidly like melting snow. The 7 Dragon Kings' targets were Yu Yu and Evil Moon in the center. As for Nian Bing and the others in the air, as well as the magical beasts on the ground. But they did not even look at them. For a moment, Evil Moon's side was suddenly in a tight spot. The ordinary undead army could not even delay the 7 Dragon Kings. And at this moment, Yu Yu quickly chanted, and the 5th incantation finally came to an end. In an instant, all the black color in the 7 Miorda's sealing bottles disappeared at the same time. Instead, it was replaced by an incomparably surging red flame. Yes, it was a flame without temperature, a flame full of evil. Yu Yu's hands returned to her body, transforming into a strange hand shape, and the blood-red ball of light was suspended above her hands in silence. It seemed that this red ball of light was the source of all the red flames. The evil aura gushing out from the ice cave under her feet was constantly absorbed by Yu Yu. With every absorption, the red light around her body became stronger. As the red light became stronger and stronger, Yu Yu's pale face became more obvious. Her pair of slender little hands had blood flowing in them. Her pair of black eyes had no depth, only endless emptiness. Her mouth opened again, and she chanted word by word, with blood and magic, power, as lock, open, time, space door. The chanting speed slowed down again. Every time she chanted a word, Yu Yu's body would tremble, and the 7 Morta's sealing bottles would also tremble. She seemed to be very strained now. Her body was teetering in the blood-red flames, and it seemed that she could be destroyed at any time. Evil Moon could see Yu Yu's changes, and so could the 7 Dragon Kings. The 7 Dragon Kings once again let out a loud dragon roar at the same time. The 7 Dragon Kings spat out their quintessential dragon breaths at the same time and immediately cleared out an open space. The Fire Dragon King, Garamandes, and the Ice Dragon King, Sasaris, flew up at the same time, and with a breath of ice and fire, they rushed toward Yu Yu in the air. From the time when the god-killing arrows were first fired to when the 7 Dragon Kings finally approached Yu Yu, it was only a quarter of an hour. During this quarter of an hour, a lot of things happened, and now it was the final critical moment. Evil Moon's body floated up, and his eyes turned completely blood-red. The undead warlocks were chanting something in a voice that humans couldn't understand. A large amount of evil energy pervaded the surroundings, and a black airflow surrounded them. Suddenly, the Dragon Kings lost sight of Yu Yu. A large amount of black fog appeared out of thin air, and when it came in contact with the dragon chi, it made a puffing sound. The Zombie King and Vampire 5 also rushed out to meet the 2 Dragon Kings in the air. They showed a fighting strength that was completely different from ordinary zombies and vampires, especially the green, flying Zombie King, whose body was more than 10 feet tall, actually resisted the attacks of the 2 Dragon Kings from below. The Vampire Kings constantly emitted a bloody breath, and with lightning speed, they wrapped around the 2 Dragon Kings. Under the cooperation of dozens of Zombie Kings, Vampire Kings, and Undead Warlocks, Garamandes and Sasaris were forced into a disadvantageous position for a while, and were unable to move forward. A pale green skull appeared in front of Evil Moon. He muttered something, and the black fog was dyed dark green by the layers of green light released from his body. Wrapped in this dark green light, the vampires and zombies became faster. The Vampire King could even achieve short-distance teleportation. Sasaris and Garamandes were hit several times because of their huge bodies, causing the 2 to roar and spit out mouthfuls of dragon's breath, forcing the enemies around them to retreat. Evil Moon's position was right in front of Yu Yu's body. He coldly looked at everything that was happening in front of him, without the slightest trace of panic. His purpose was the same as Nianbing's, and that was to delay. At this time, the undead army on the ground was cleared by the other 5 Dragon Kings. When the 5 Dragon Kings were about to rise into the air, a gray airflow suddenly appeared like a cloud. Then, the 5 Dragon Kings shook at the same time, and their bodies that were about to fly suddenly fell down. They were surprised to find that they had lost the ability to fly. Demanteti frowned and said, "Forbidden curse, it's that dark witch." She began to make strange sound from her mouth, and the other 4 Dragon Kings, under the leadership of Kagiosi, instantly surrounded Demanteti. The dragon's draconic magic finally appeared. Indeed, the forbidden curse was cast by Safin, but it was not enough. The only thing he could do was to make the several Dragon Kings temporarily lose the ability to fly. The 5 Dragon Kings were not in a hurry to attack, but the sacred teacher had already freed himself. Under the effect of his fighting aura, he flew high into the air, helping Garamandes and Sasaris to share some of the pressure. Under the effect of his sacred fighting aura, the offensive power of the Vampire King and Zombie King immediately decreased by a lot. At this time, changes appeared in the sky. Unknowingly, faintly used 6th line of incantation was completed. The blood-red flames directly shot into the sky along the passage formed by Miorda's sealing bottle. The golden symbols on Miorda's sealing bottle emitted an intense golden light. One by one, the symbols floated out and actually left the bottle, merging with the red pillar of light in the sky. The sky seemed to have been dyed by the blood-red flames, turning completely blood-red. Even the cloudless space created by the all-out attacks of the 8 deities had turned blood-red. A gigantic blood-red door of unknown size appeared in the sky. This door was very simple, without any decorative patterns. It was surrounded by golden vein patterns, and the body of the door was completely red. Although it looked like an illusion of nothingness, it was still possible to tell the difference between the two. However, the pressure suddenly came. Under the red sky, everything around them was filled with a haze. The killing intent of the 7 Dragon Kings and the gods had also risen. They all knew that they could not let Faintly You continue with her incantation. Otherwise, the seal of Miorda's sealing bottle would really be opened. Evil Moon looked at the strange phenomenon in the sky and was overjoyed. He knew the moment he had been looking forward to was coming. The ancient incantation on the ground that he had accidentally obtained was completely correct. His painstaking efforts were not in vain. Although Faintly You's body was shrouded in dark green fog, her voice could still be heard clearly. At this moment, Evil Moon suddenly felt that he had let down his daughter. After all, the feelings of more than 10 years still existed. Even if he was a person of darkness, the blood relationship between father and daughter always existed. Faintly You's words of returning life to him lingered in his mind. Evil Moon suddenly had an impulse to stop all of this from going on. However, he was, after all, the evil lord, the ruler of evil. He suppressed his impulse, and the auxiliary dark magic became even more powerful. The 4 Dragon Kings guarding Demanteti simultaneously spouted a powerful dragon's breath and went straight to Evil Moon. They all knew that only by dealing with Evil Moon could they stop Faintly You's incantation. Evil Moon smiled sinisterly. His body flashed slightly, and he had already retreated into the fog behind him. The dragon's breath led by Kagiosis missed, but the dark green fog only fluctuated slightly. After their attack, Evil Moon reappeared, and there were blood-red beads around his body. Kagiosis frowned. Dark magic tool, Bloody Devour. Evil Moon glanced at Kagiosis, as if to say, "Do you also know about the existence of dark magic tools?" The blood-red magic plant spun at lightning speed, and blood-red magic tools floated out and blended into the dark green mist. Suddenly, all the zombie kings, vampire kings, and necromancers seemed to have taken an aphrodisiac and broke out. Garamandes, Sasaris, and Sacred Teacher were instantly attacked violently, and they could not bear it anymore. With a muffled sound, they quickly retreated, avoiding the sharp attacks of the undead. The real powerhouses of the undead army did not chase after them. Under the protection of the fog, they floated in front of Evil Moon and looked at the 7 dragon kings with cold, lifeless eyes. Purify, sin, evil, flames, here, my call. Faintly used 7th incantation was completed. A golden flame rose from the fog and shot into the blood-red gate in the air in a beam of light formed by Mjordis's sealing bottle. The gate trembled slightly and opened a gap. Golden light penetrated through the gap, and the air seemed to solidify for a moment before returning to normal. A triangular golden symbol appeared on the gate. Demanteti's draconic magic was finally completed. A golden halo appeared above her head. The halo had a diameter of 10 feet. It floated out, and the holy aura immediately drove away the surrounding evil and went straight to Evil Moon. However, even the Dragon Kings themselves knew that Evil Moon, who had the magic tool Bloody Devour, could not be killed by this draconic evil warding spell. So, at the same time that the golden halo appeared, the 7 Dragon Kings rushed over at the same time. At this moment, a beautiful voice with a cold air sounded in the air. It was the sound of chanting. The voice was so smooth and moving, and the speed of the chanting was amazing. Demanteti's draconic evil warding spell had just started chanting. When the draconic evil warding spell had just crossed half of the space and was still a certain distance away from Evil Moon, the spell had already solidified. Land of Geelon, land of floating clouds. Heaven and earth weep. Mountains close. King of Blue, listen to the ancient covenant and go to the other side of time. Let the ice elements in all directions listen to my request. Witness my pious tears with a touch of sorrow, a trace of longing, a deep fear, destruction. The ice and snow in the air were almost completely condensed in an instant. The huge ice aura soared at this moment. It was like a voice, but also like countless voices chanting. It seemed to contain all the ice elements in the air in an instant. A huge blue ice lotus appeared in front of Evil Moon out of thin air. Demanteti's draconic evil warding spell became so small in front of the ice lotus. Almost in an instant, it was swallowed up by this ice blue lotus with a diameter of 10 feet. The pure and beautiful ice lotus had a cold aura and extremely cold energy, as if it was going to completely freeze everything around it. Even if it was not directed at Evil Moon, the demon lord, who was closest to the ice lotus, still felt a monstrous cold that was almost irresistible. What kind of magic was this? Evil Moon was a little sluggish. Casting such a super ice magic in such an extremely cold place. Its power could only be described as terrifying. Even Demanteti's 12th level draconic evil warding spell was like a joke in front of it. Hundreds of figures appeared at the other end of the ice valley. Silent, they stopped above the ice valley, as if they were ice sculptures themselves. The faint light emitted a cold aura. They belonged to this place. They belonged to the cold. The leader was a woman. She was wearing a white priest's robe, and on her chest was embroidered a blue ice lotus, which was exactly the same as the ice lotus in front of Evil Moon. A calm and peaceful voice came from her mouth. Dragon King, I don't want to be your enemy, but please don't stop the ceremony in front of you, for the sake of the humans of the Yangon continent. Sorry to offend you. Her expression was so calm. Although she did not speak to the 7 Dragon Kings, her kind eyes had drifted to Nian Bing, who was fighting with the gods. Cajesus frowned and said, "The ice goddess priestess." The woman smiled and shook her head, saying, "I am, but I am not the ice goddess priestess, you know." The ones who had come were Nianbing's mother, the new ice goddess priestess, the ice spirit, as well as the most outstanding magic casters of the ice god tower. Perhaps they weren't the strongest, but 100 ice magic casters were capable of unleashing spells in this extremely cold place. It was absolutely terrifying. Here, the magic they could get was incomparable in other places of the Yangon continent. The soul of the Smurfs, which was the ice lotus, was launched by 100 magicians and had reached the 14th level. Nian Bing naturally saw the appearance of her mother. Only then did she know that her mother was actually such a powerful magician. The magic that 100 ice magicians cast in the environment was terrifying, but if there was no ice spirit who had reached the 13th level as a guide, they could not complete a 14th level super magic. 14th level meant the same level of strength as the main god of the godly continent. Mom! Nian Bing's shout resolved the doubts in the hearts of the Dragon King. At this moment, a blue and a red figure appeared out of thin air. The red figure was extremely fast, while the blue figure emitted a blue brilliance that was as thin as a cicada's wing amidst the phoenix cry. It was just a flash of light. Together with Halogen, Oscar, and Nian Bing's attacks, the three gods who desperately resisted didn't even have the chance to explode their acupoints and became the dust of history. Sneak attack. Yes, it was a sneak attack. The two who launched the sneak attack were very familiar to Nian Bing. They had red and blue crystal wings, respectively. After the sudden burst of power, Nian Bing saw the hidden bitterness on their faces. Why did you abandon us? Can't we help you? Chun, Feng Nu, you're here too. The ones who appeared in front of Nian Bing were Lan Shun and Feng Nu, who had reached the 13th level after a qualitative leap in the Phoenix volcano. Feng Nu said unhappily, "Not only are we here, Ling is here too. She's with Mom. Just you wait. After this is over, we'll punish you. How dare you abandon us?" Humph. Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, "Why would I abandon you? I'm afraid you're in danger." Lan Chun and his sister stood on the same side. "Well, you don't have to explain. After this is over, Mom will make the decision for us." In a flash, Nian Bing led Lan Chun, Feng Nu, and Halogen to Evil Moon on Oscar's back. Looking at the Seven Dragon King in front of her, Nian Bing shrugged helplessly. "Brothers, I'm sorry, but it seems that you can't destroy the opening ceremony of the seal." He didn't even look at his son, as if he didn't know Oscar at all. In front of him, Nian Bing, her husband, Halogen, Evil Moon, and a large number of undead powerhouses, plus the Ice Spirit and those Ice Mages, there were at least 6 13th level powerhouses. Not to mention that they couldn't destroy the seal. Even if Nian Bing and the others wanted to deal with the 7 Dragon Kings, they would only be defeated. The scene fell into silence. The 7 Dragon Kings seemed to be thinking about something until the faint voice changed again, waking them up from their thoughts. "Fire. That incinerates all things. Listen to my summon." The dark black flame rose into the air, turned into a sharp spear, and pierced the blood-red door in the air. The door opened a little more, and the golden light became stronger. A circle of dark red lines appeared around the golden triangle on the door. Kagiosis said somewhat dejectedly, "It seems that we can't stop it. However, don't think that you can go against gods like this." As he said that, he had already turned into his human form. He looked at Nian Bing and quietly gave her a look. Nian Bing was stunned, and a sense of uneasiness rose in her heart. At this moment, a soft voice seemed to sound from all directions at the same time. "It seems that we have to solve it in the end. I didn't expect that there would be so many powerhouses on this continent." 2 illusory figures appeared in the distance. When Nian Bing's spiritual power detected their existence, they were still thousands of feet away from the ice valley. When the soft voice finished speaking, they were already in front of her. The 2 of them were wearing red and black armor respectively. The armor was made of sparkling and translucent ores. The 2 of them looked very ordinary. The man on the left had a medium build. He had short gray hair and looked very energetic. It was a pity that he had a huge nose that destroyed the balance of his facial features. He couldn't be described as handsome. The only thing that was strange about him was his eyes. He was a well-built man with a pair of peach blossom eyes. His eyes rippled as he looked at Nian Bing with what he thought was a seductive gaze. This caused Nian Bing to feel a chill in his heart. On the other hand, the other man beside him looked even more ordinary. There was nothing special about him. His eyes flickered with a sinister light. The aura of the 2 of them wasn't strong. Their appearance didn't bring any pressure. However, the words of the 7 Dragon Kings made Nian Bing's heart skip a beat. Chapter 223. Kagiosis and his people greet the 2 Lord Gods. Lord Gods? They were actually Lord Gods? Nian Bing was shocked. He knew that Kagiasis was deliberately reminding him. Even Shiue's face became ugly. On the godly mainland, the title of Lord God only belonged to powerhouses above the 14th level. The dragon god told Nian Bing that most of the Lord gods were sleeping. Including him, there were a total of 8 Lord gods. Some of them were added after the Great War of the Gods 10,000 years ago. However, these Lord gods were at least 10,000 years old. They had lived for more than 10,000 years with human bodies. How strong they were! Perhaps only people of the same level as them on the godly mainland would know. The feminine voice sounded again. He didn't seem to be in a hurry to stop Yu from completing the spell. With his eyes rippling, he said with his feminine voice with a smile, 7 Dragon Kings, you don't have to be so polite. Kagiasis said respectfully, I'm sorry, Lord God. We are incompetent and can't stop these humans. It doesn't matter. You have tried your best. The strength of these people is indeed beyond our expectations. It seems that the Yangon continent is developing very fast. Perhaps, in a few years, it will become another lost continent. While talking, there was a hint of murderous intent in his eyes. Let me introduce myself. I am one of the 8 Lord gods of the godly mainland, the god of Death Valley Dragon. This is the god of misfortune Xiaoyu. With your strength, you shouldn't stay on this continent. As long as you are willing, I can extradite you to the godly mainland and become a member of the gods. As proud gods, you are much stronger than ordinary people here. Nian Bing was very calculative. He didn't expect that the Lord God would actually come in person, but things had developed to this point. He couldn't stop. He could only hope that Yu's spell would end soon. Although they were not as strong as the Lord God, it would be enough as long as they could delay until Yu finished the spell. Nian Bing snorted disdainfully and said sarcastically, The godly mainland? A member of the gods. To that hell-like place of yours? Lord Death God, I'm afraid you've only brought us bad luck. The Valley Dragon was stunned, and his expression changed slightly. So you've been to the continent of gods before? As he said that, he looked at the dwarf Halogen in some doubt. That flowing gaze suddenly became solid. Seelan grunted and his body swayed slightly. He took a step back on Oscar's back. The look in Nian Bing's eyes changed slightly. Even if Halogen wasn't the strongest, he was definitely in the top 3. This god of death only needed one look. He was actually able to make Halogen retreat. He was so strong, as expected of the title of sovereign. Whether I've been there or not, that's up to the god of sorrow to decide. I didn't expect that we would actually alarm 2 chief gods this time. It's truly our honor. Gulong touched the gray hair on his head and looked down at the red armor on his body. He smiled and said, It seems that we were right to come. You guys are much more difficult to deal with than we thought. Now, it's time for you guys to make a decision. I'll give you 2 choices. 1, end the seal and follow us back to the godly mainland. Swear to become a member of the gods. The other is to die. He purposely dragged out the word die. His expression darkened. All of you will die. Halogen roared, Die? Then teach me how to write this word. Divinity Slayer. Raising his huge axe, he suddenly jumped up from Oscar's back. The huge axe brought up a sky-shocking black rainbow as it suddenly chopped towards the god-mourning Valley Dragon. Nian Bing had seen Shu Luan unleash his full power before. Now that he saw Shu Luan unleash his full power, he immediately unleashed the spiritual power that he had recovered. The heavens I domain instantly enveloped Shu Luan's body, increasing his strength. Extinguishing soul flame, listen to my command. The faint voice changed again at this moment. A black light rose from the fog behind Evil Moon and went straight to the sky. It merged with the huge blood-red door. The door opened a little more. The golden triangle with dark red patterns suddenly had a black halo around it. The Valley Dragon and the god of misfortune Xia, you didn't seem to be in a hurry. It was as if they didn't hear the faint voice. Gulong looked at Halogen's attack and raised his right hand. He lightly slapped out a palm to meet Halogen's attack. The axe light disappeared almost instantly. The red airflow didn't seem to be very powerful. However, there was a little golden light in the red airflow. Although the golden light was very small, it was very dazzling. Boom! The shock wave of the collision rose into the sky and accompanied Halogen into the sky. Halogen was blasted up hundreds of feet. Although he held his battle axe tightly with both hands, the web between his thumb and index finger was already cracked. The light on the god-slaying axe also became much dimmer. He spat out a mouthful of blood. When Halogen's body rose to the highest point, he seemed to have lost consciousness. His body rolled and fell from the sky. Nianbing's sky's eye field disappeared the moment they collided. It was shattered by the violent explosion. Feng Nu rose into the sky and caught Halogen. At this time, the powerful dwarf warrior had already fallen into a coma. Silence, a deathly silence. Just a casual strike had knocked Shu Luan, who had used his full power, unconscious. What kind of power did this represent? The Valley Dragon made a sound of surprise and said, "It seems that I underestimated this dwarf. He was only injured and didn't die from my attack. And it seems that his strength isn't as simple as just the 13th level. Now, it's not too late to change your mind. Although the 13th level is strong, the gap between the 13th and 14th level is an insurmountable gap." Nianbing didn't look at Halogen. She stared at the valley god in front of her. Her eyes narrowed into slits. The ultimate realm's Huangji acupoint is indeed the strongest point. Others couldn't see it, but how could she not see it with her sky's eye acupoint? When she saw the golden light in those eyes, she already knew that Halogen wouldn't be able to fight against Gulong. The ultimate realm's Huangji acupoint was the true strength. The strongest point was the difference between levels. Halogen didn't have any chance at all. A 14th level Earth God, an over-god with the ultimate realm's Huangji acupoint, an over-god who had lived for 10,000 years. Was he someone they could deal with? There was no answer. No one could tell Nianbing the answer. Gulong's eyes moved. He smiled and said, "Since you know, what are you waiting for? I think the first choice is the best choice for you." Although his voice was very feminine, his bones exuded the strongest arrogance. Of course, he did have the right to be arrogant. Nianbing said somewhat helplessly, "Well, it seems that we have no other choice. Do it." She shouted the last two words, which scared the Valley Dragon and Xiaoyu. At this critical moment, Selfless Moon no longer had any selfish thoughts. Evil Moon no longer had any selfish thoughts. His undead experts immediately charged forward, while Nianbing's sky, domain turned completely black. Two phoenix cries rang out, one blue and one red. The two phoenixes flew up at the same time. They attacked from two different directions. Nianbing's glabella also lit up. A golden light covered the two over-gods with great pressure. At this critical moment, he couldn't care less about saving his strength. If he wanted to hold these two guys back, he had to go all out. A clear and gentle chant rang out, and a huge ice lotus that had stopped drifted into the air. It drew an arc in the air before landing on the two over-gods. At this moment, apart from Selfless Moon, everyone on Nianbing's side who could attack had already attacked. The sacred teacher was just about to rush out, but he was stopped by Kateriosis. Kateriosis said in an unusually serious voice, "With the over-god's strength, do they still need our help? That would be the greatest insult to the two over-gods." The sacred teacher was stunned, but he immediately understood that the 7 dragon kings had no intention of helping the two over-gods. It was just like how they didn't help the gods when they first came here. "You're right. No wonder the dragon god insisted on making you his successor." Gulong's voice sounded. Under the combined attack of everyone, he and Xiaoyu disappeared at almost the same time. After Nianbing's spell missed, he suddenly realized something and shouted, "Mom, be careful. It's the ultimate spirit point." Not only did these two over-gods possess the ultimate Emperor acupoint, but they also possessed the ultimate Earth Spirit acupoint, which represented extreme speed. Their movements could only be tracked through the Heaven's Eye acupoint. When Nianbing's attack missed, the Heaven's Eye acupoint had already determined the direction of the over-god's attacks. The Ice Spirit and the mages of the Ice God Tower continued chanting. Two faint figures appeared in front of them in a flash. The golden light in Gulong's hand appeared again. This time, his target was Nianbing's mother. That huge ice lotus suddenly disappeared, and when it reappeared, it happened to be the moment Gulong attacked. The limit of speed was teleportation, and under the perfect control of the ice spirit, a spell of the 14th step had actually reached the limit of speed. Gulong and Xiaoyu naturally had their reasons for choosing the ice spirit. This was because they could feel that in this environment, the 100 mages led by the ice spirit had the ability to delay them. Therefore, the first to be destroyed was naturally the greatest threat. At the level of an overgod, their attack method was very simple. It was just that Gulong's attack was with his right hand, while Xiaoyu's attack was with her left hand. As the two of them extended their hands, they met the ice lotus that was formed from the full power of 100 magicians. F*CK. Nian Bing teleported to the battlefield. However, all the magical elements in the center of the collision were distorted. He had appeared in a different place from where he was supposed to appear, and a violent collision still occurred. Halos floated in all directions. In almost an instant, the ice valley disappeared. The entire ice valley disappeared completely. This was something that the gods couldn't do before. However, it disappeared under the full power of the two overgods and the mages led by the ice spirit. The shockwave created by the explosion saved Kitty, her pets, and the gods fighting the pets because of the vacuum in the middle. However, the surrounding glaciers completely disappeared. The ground became flat, as if this was a flat ice field to begin with. Gulong and Xiaoyu's bodies only trembled slightly before calming down. However, the 100 ice mages spat out blood at the same time. The ice spirit's face turned ashen, and a white light flashed in her chest. If she hadn't opened the west meridian to absorb a large amount of ice element, and if it hadn't been for the current environment, the two overgods' ultimate emperor acupoints would have been enough to make the mages led by her disappear like glaciers. Although she blocked the attack, the ice lotus disappeared. At the same time, the ice spirit was heavily injured. Her vision turned dark, and she couldn't even maintain the blizzard below her. Her body fell directly to the ground. Nian Bing caught her mother in time. An unprecedented grief and anger surged from her heart. Without holding back, she transferred her life force into her mother's body. Her eyes had turned blood red. She roared, "Oscar!" A gray figure appeared beside Nian Bing. In the next moment, Nian Bing carefully placed her mother on Oscar's back. Gulong and Xiaoyu didn't care about Nian Bing's state of mind. When they saw that the ice spirit was no longer able to fight, they didn't care about the mages who were as weak as ants. The two of them split up. One rushed towards Yu, while the other rushed towards Nian Bing. From the simple contact, they could tell that Nian Bing was the leader of this group. Killing her was a must. The flame of eternally blazing, ceaseless breathing. Hear my command. The purple flame rose into the air with the faint chant. It was the flame of the fourth color. The dark red door was half open. The incantation was recited very quickly because no one could see what he looked like under the fog of the evil moon. Nian Bing stood up straight in the air and looked coldly at Gulong. "You hurt my mother." Gulong smiled at Nian Bing. "So what?" Nian Bing's red eyes shone with a terrifying light. "When I was young, someone took away my mother's love. It wasn't until recently that I saw my mother again. At that time, I swore to myself that no one would be able to take my mother away from me again, not even a real god." Gulong looked at Nian Bing's forehead that flickered with a faint brilliance. "With your Tianyan point, perhaps, in a few hundred years, you can also become an expert at my level. However, I'm afraid the one who will die now will be you." Nian Bing smiled. It was a somewhat sinister smile. "Is that so? Then I'll take a gamble." "Gamble?" Gulong looked at Nian Bing with some surprise. After coming to this continent, Yangon made his heart that had been silent for many years come alive again. He believed that the goddess of misfortune on the other side would not let the process of unsealing continue. Therefore, he was not in a hurry to kill Nian Bing. Nian Bing nodded and said, "That's right. It's a gamble. A gamble on my own fate, and also a gamble on your fate." The blood-red eyes suddenly returned to normal. In the next moment, the light between his brows suddenly brightened. The golden light spread almost endlessly. Nian Bing and Gu Long heard a shattering sound almost at the same time. Then, Nian Bing's body trembled. Flames of the four realms descend upon my body. Faint Yu's accelerated voice sounded again. This time, above the huge blood-red door in the sky, the four flames that had risen before descended at the same time. The fog emitted by Evil Moon unexpectedly dissipated, revealing Faint Yu in the sky. Faint Yu changed, for flames soared around her body. She was like a flame queen. Her hands reverted to the shape of claws and folded in front of her chest. The blood-red light had filled all the spaces between her claws. Xia Yu's strength was indeed terrifying. Whether it was Lan Shun, Feng Nu, or the powerful Dark King Evil Moon, at this time, they could clearly feel the huge gap between the 14th rank and the 13th rank. When Xia Yu appeared again, the Vampire King, the Zombie King, and those necromancers were torn to pieces by his surging Do Qi. They couldn't even get close to him. Feng Nu and Lan Chun had been shaken back. Evil Moon's bloody devour had turned into a blood-red light spot. The undead magic he launched with all his strength was completely immune in front of the tyrannical Do Qi of the 14th rank. Xia Yu's body swayed slightly, and he arrived in front of Faint Yu. Across the air, he punched at Faint Yu, who was burning with four flames. At this time, Evil Moon, Lan Shun, and Feng Nu were already powerless to stop him. The attacks launched by the ice magicians who fell on the ground in the distance could only turn into ice powder in front of the Do Qi of the God of Misfortune. His left fist, shining with golden light, imprinted a golden figure, which was about to rush into the range of Miortis's sealing bottle. Faint Yu didn't have any expression. Looking up at the door in the air, she had completely lost control of her body at this time. She could only continue the incantation, but the golden fist full of the aura of death had already arrived. Puff! The golden fist disappeared, but Faint Yu was still chanting, and the light beam formed by Miortis's sealing bottle was not affected in the slightest. However, there was one more figure outside the light beam, blocking the golden fist. Sina! Evil Moon roared, his body swayed, and he caught the figure. It was the Vampire Queen who had never appeared. Relying on dark concealment, she had been guarding Faint Yu in order to prevent anyone who wanted to destroy the incantation. Why are you so stupid? Evil Moon's eyes were somewhat moist at this time. A bitter smile appeared on Sina's face. That's our daughter, our only daughter. Evil Moon, do you know? I don't love you because of your power and strength. I love you because of you. In order to fulfill your wish, what is my life? With a self-deprecating smile, Evil Moon watched as his wife's body turned into a cloud of dust and drifted away. He was stunned, his body trembling, and the evil aura surged. His heart was in severe pain. Only now did he know that his cold heart could actually feel pain. Boom, boom. The goddess of misfortune, Xia Yu, sent Feng Nu and Lan Chun flying with 2 punches. After being hit by the Huangji acupoint again, the 2 women had changed back to their original human forms in the air. After all, they were not real phoenixes. Blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Being seriously injured, they could only rely on the royal feathers to not fall in the air at this time. Previously, they had learned a lesson from Halogen and tried not to fight Xia Yu head-on so they could hold on. However, now that Faint Yu was in danger, they had to attack with all their strength. But the result was still that they couldn't resist. A 14th level true god was too powerful. 5th level, flame, attack. My enemy, Xia Yu's figure flashed, and she went around Evil Moon and punched towards Faint Yu again. She wasn't afraid of Evil Moon, but she didn't want to waste time. At this time, Evil Moon was still hugging his wife, and he was completely in a daze. He didn't notice Xia Yu's figure at all, and he just muttered to himself, "Is it worth it? Is it all worth it?" Xia Yu was about to succeed, but at this time, the blood-red light ball in Faint Yu's hand suddenly burned. It was a sparkling red flame, and it burned at the same time as the other 4 flames around her. The flame of the 5 realms. Yes, it was the flame of the 5 realms. The golden fist disappeared when it entered Miortis's bottle of sealing, and disappeared in the flame of the 5 realms. Xia Yu was slightly stunned. Just as she was about to attack again, the flame of the five realms rose into the air and flew towards the blood-red door in the sky. At this time, the opening of the seal had reached the final stage. The moment the flame of the five realms rose into the air, even with Xiaoyu's strength, she was sent flying. On the other side, God Morning Valley Dragon was in a state of panic. When the golden light from Nianbing's forehead spread to her entire body, an aura that made Gu Long tremble with fear suddenly appeared. Sensing that something was wrong, he didn't wait any longer and immediately attacked Nianbing. The attack from the ultimate Emperor acupuncture point was like lightning, and it blasted towards Nianbing. However, what met Gu Long's attack was also a golden lightning. Amidst the violent explosion, Nianbing was still floating in the air, but her body was no longer trembling. On the other hand, Gu Long was blasted 10 feet away. Nianbing's eyes had unknowingly turned golden. I want to try the feeling of killing a god. A substantial golden light shot out from his forehead almost instantaneously. Even Gu Long's ultimate Earth Spirit Cave couldn't help him dodge it. His right hand attacked again, but he was shocked to find that his ultimate Emperor acupuncture point had been penetrated by the faint golden light. Following that, Gu Long's body stopped, and he stared blankly at Nianbing, his eyes filled with disbelief. Golden flames continued to shoot out from Nianbing's 7 orifices. His golden eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Bang! Gu Long's head exploded, and his brain matter burst out. His body lost the protection of energy and was frozen in an ice tornado, and then torn into pieces. In a flash, Nianbing had already arrived in front of Xiaoyu, just in time to meet the goddess of misfortune, Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's mind was completely focused on destroying the seal, and she didn't think that Nianbing would be able to arrive in time. She looked suspiciously at Nianbing, who was standing in front of her, and whose entire body was emitting a terrifying golden light. "Where's Gu Long?" "Dead." Nianbing's voice sounded like it came from hell. At this moment, the flame of the 5 realms had already soared into the sky and imprinted itself on the blood-red door. The door finally opened, and Yu began her final chant. "Heaven, earth, return to chaos in forbidden world, Fong, brilliant, tyrannical, flame, formation, open, ba." As Yu began her final chant, another ray of golden light floated out from between Nianbing's brows, heading straight for Xiaoyu. Although he didn't say anything, his eyes were filled with intense killing intent. Xiaoyu saw the golden eye open between Nianbing's brows and suddenly realized something. With a roar, a ray of golden light burst forth from his left arm, and a rain of blood mixed with the golden light. He actually broke his arm that contained the Emperor acupoint, and a huge amount of golden energy fused with the white light from his head to meet that ray of golden light. Xiaoyu himself didn't stop at all, and in an instant, he flew back and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. The golden light disappeared without a sound, and Xiaoyu's arm disappeared at the same time. Nianbing floated there without moving, and the golden light between his brows kept flashing. Every time it flashed, there would be a moment of pause. The killing intent in his eyes gradually disappeared, and until the last moment before he fainted, he didn't turn around to look at Yu, who was chanting her final chant. Oscar's huge body quickly appeared below Nianbing, and at this time, Nianbing fell down, peacefully falling down. He landed beside his mother and fell into a deep sleep, his whole body still wrapped in the golden light. Oscar, who was connected to Nianbing's mind, could feel the strange aura on Nianbing's body. That aura didn't seem to belong to physical energy, nor was it spiritual energy, but a strange mixture of energies. Although Nianbing was unconscious, his aura was very stable and strong, and there were no signs of him being injured. The battle below was also coming to an end. In the fox's fox fart domain, Kitty's pets exploded with super strong fighting power. In the stalemate, whether it was Kitty's pets or the 6 gods, the injuries on their bodies were constantly increasing. However, these pets' bodies were too huge, and each of them had an astonishing defensive power. Although the gods exploded their acupuncture points, they were also affected by the stench and their fighting power was weakened. Every time they tried to concentrate their power to kill one or two magical beasts, they would inevitably attract the violent attacks of all the magical beasts. In just a short quarter of an hour, the pets' attacks became fiercer and fiercer, and the gods' defense became more and more difficult as the energy from exploding their acupuncture points gradually decreased. They were still hoping that the 7 Dragon Kings and the Dragon King would come and save them, but the Dragon King and the Dragon King, who appeared one after another, didn't even look at them, and just let them be besieged by the magical beasts. Finally, the 6 gods heaved a sigh of relief. The stench disappeared, and the magical beasts in front of them also returned to their original appearance. Each of them seemed to be much weaker than before, and they just surrounded them and stopped attacking. At this moment, the gods finally had a chance to catch their breath and looked at the sky. Although exploding their acupuncture points would cause them great losses, once their boss succeeded, then the situation would definitely change. However, when they raised their heads to look at the sky, they just happened to see Nian Bing suddenly exploding with unimaginable power. In just an instant, one of the 2 Dragon Kings died and the other fled. The 6 gods were stunned for a moment. Then, they all made the same choice. They gathered all their remaining energy and flew into the sky. They wanted to leave this terrifying place as soon as possible. Even their boss had run away. What good would it be for them to stay here? Kitty was a pure-hearted little girl. If it was any other time, it would be very difficult for her to kill them all. However, today was different. She had seen the 6 gods besieged by the magical beast before, and she had seen them in the territory of the white race. The hands of these 6 gods were once stained with the blood of the white race. When a pure-hearted little girl exploded, it was also very terrifying. The mythological beasts, led by Guan Guan, had already lost most of their attacking power due to overexertion of their potential. Their degree of weakness was not much worse than the deities. However, when the 6 deities were about to fly up, they felt a pain in their brains at the same time. Their do-chi was instantly cut off, and they fell back to the ground. A faint silver light sealed the sky. Kitty was no longer the Kitty of the past. At this time, she had inherited the spiritual power of her parents. The spiritual magic unique to the white race was definitely effective in sealing the weak gods. The magical beasts slowly parted to the sides. The earth trembled slightly with a muffled sound. A huge figure appeared in front of the gods. They were shocked to see that it was a pure gold figure. That's right, it was pure gold. Its huge body carried an infinite amount of pressure. With every step it took, they would feel an incomparably strong pressure. They were sure that it was a dragon. However, it looked different from the Dragon King. Although this dragon's wings were very wide and thick, its body was even bigger. Even the 7 Dragon Kings in the sky could not compare to its huge body. Its golden body was covered with a layer of extremely thick scales. On its back, there were 7 sharp spikes that were half a foot long. Its long tail dragged behind it, and there were 9 forks on its tail. Its whole body emitted a faint golden light. On the back of this dragon sat a little girl. Her body was set off by the golden light, and she looked so pure. However, at this time, her big eyes were completely filled with killing intent. This huge dragon gave the gods a feeling of déjà vu. Back then, when they faced this golden-backed Earth Dragon King, golden-backed Earth Dragon King Little Stutter had yet to evolve to this form. Right now, not only did its size change, the valiant aura surrounding its body was also many times more tyrannical than before. Chapter 2:24. They all knew that little girl. She was the fish that escaped from the White Man clan. Thinking of the magical beasts around them, they suddenly understood who was dealing with them. A cold glint flashed in the cat's eyes. Little Stutterer's heavy footsteps suddenly became hurried. He actually sped up and charged towards the 6 deities. His pair of huge wings spread out to both sides like 2 huge machetes. The dragon tail on his back also stood up. Because of the weakness after the exploding acupoints, the gods could only show despair in their eyes at this time. At this moment, no one could save them. Their fate, like the white men they had slaughtered enough, could only end in the end. 9 golden lights shot out from Little Stutterer's tail at the same time. In just a moment, 9 gods spurted blood at the same time and were thrown away. They couldn't dodge the energy impact at all, which was faster than lightning. The last thing they saw in their lives was a golden body growing larger and larger above them. Yu Yu's body, which was floating in the air, suddenly trembled slightly. Her eyes, which had turned back to black, were filled with deep sorrow. Faint blood energy continued to rise, and the sound of shattering rang out one after another. The 7 sealing bottles of Mordas around her shattered at the same time. 7 black streams of air merged into Yu Yu's body almost at the same time. Then, Yu Yu's hands formed a hand shape and pressed into the air. The black streams of air turned into a huge golden symbol in the air. Leaving behind afterimages, it merged into the vast space behind the blood-red door that had already been opened. No one knew what was in the dark space. But Faint Yu's spell to open the seal was finally completed. The blood-red sky seemed to tremble slightly. Then, the blood-red door opened in the air, and the black abyss turned golden. All the evil aura completely disappeared at this moment. The golden light shone directly on Faint Yu's body. Faint Yu closed her eyes and did as Evil Moon said. She should become the real sacrifice now. Evil Moon stared blankly at his daughter, who was shrouded in the golden light. His eyes were filled with endless sadness. He clearly saw that his only daughter's eyes were filled with sparkling tears. The tears were so pure. She was crying. Evil Moon suddenly felt as if he had lost everything. His body and mind were in a complete emptiness. His plan succeeded. But, however, his heart was far from the excitement and joy that should have been there. There was only sadness. The 7 Dragon Kings moved at this moment. They surrounded Evil Moon, and Oscar carried Nian Bing to the light pillar where Yu Yu was. Evil Moon did not resist as the 7 Dragon Kings had expected. Instead, he floated there and looked up at his daughter in the air. A hint of clarity appeared in his eyes, and his hands were still in the same position as when he was hugging Sina. The golden light continued to shine, and the bloody light in the sky continued to fluctuate. Everyone was waiting in silence. They all had their own ideas. The 7 Dragon Kings stared at Evil Moon. They were surprised to find that there was no more evil aura coming from this evil lord. He looked at Yu Yu with eyes full of guilt and apology. He didn't move. He was mumbling something, but it didn't seem like he was chanting. Instead, it seemed like he was praying. The golden light converged, and the earth trembled. A slight earthquake appeared at this time, just like the bloody light in the sky, constantly throbbing. Suddenly, the huge blood-red door in the sky faded away. Yu Yu's pale face had a little more color, and the original evil aura was replaced by a holy aura. A black light appeared in front of her chest, and her body was shrouded in a layer of golden light. No one knew what was happening now, but everyone was sure that the seal had been opened, and the lost continent was returning to this world in an unknown process. The light pillar produced by Mortis's sealing bottle disappeared, and so did the blood-red door in the sky. The sun shone on the earth, bringing bursts of vitality to everything. The cold air in the ice cave below also stopped spreading. Although the surrounding temperature was still very low, everyone felt a little warm. Not dead. Yu Yu is not dead. Evil Moon's body was trembling because of excitement. He looked at his daughter in the sacred teacher's arms as they fell from the sky. His eyes were a little hazy, and 2 drops of crystal tears rolled down from the eyes of this evil lord. Dark Dragon King Kagioseus frowned and said, "Evil Moon, the ceremony has been completed. Are you going to become the new master of the lost continent?" His words were full of sarcasm. As a master of dark energy, he certainly knew that if the promise in the curse was to be fulfilled, it must go through a ceremony. However, the imagined ceremony didn't happen, and although Yu Yu had fallen into a coma, her life was still there. Evil Moon smiled bitterly and said, "No, I don't know. I only know that after the curse is over, the lost continent will return. I originally thought that when the curse is broken, the seal will be broken, and there will be some abnormal phenomena, which will give me the opportunity to become the master of the lost continent. But now it seems that I was wrong. My daughter didn't die, and I didn't become the master of the lost continent. I'm afraid that the legendary attachment is fake. Perhaps the oath of the master of the lost continent was just an empty promise. However, I'm not disappointed at all. I'm glad that at least my daughter didn't die. I know that you have a great hatred for me. So, if you want to kill me, then kill me. But as a father, I want to ask you to let my daughter go. She has never done anything evil, and all the fault lies with me. I'm willing to use my life in exchange for my daughter's life. The 7 Dragon Kings were stunned. Was this still the evil lord? He actually said such words, and actually chose to sacrifice himself? Everyone looked at Evil Moon in disbelief, but all they saw in Evil Moon's eyes was a sense of worry. Kageosius looked at Evil Moon's eyes, and then looked at his hands that were still in the same position. He understood something and nodded, saying, "No matter what, it has already happened. I don't want to know what you did in the past. Congratulations to you. You've walked out of the darkness. Take your daughter and leave." "Boss, no, we can't let him go," the other Dragon King shouted in surprise. Evil Moon had almost caused them to fall into an irrecoverable situation last time, and even caused Oscar to almost die. They were unwilling to let him go. Demanteti took her husband's hand, looked at him deeply, and said, "Are you really sure?" Kageosius nodded firmly, and said, "He's like me at that time." After an instant of enlightenment, he had already lost everything. He has already been reborn. However, he was far from being as lucky as me. He didn't wake up until the moment of his wife's death. At that time, since the dragon god could forgive my past sins and give me a chance to be reborn, then why can't I give him such a chance? Although he may have killed a lot of people, but when he becomes a good person, he will be able to bring a good side to the human world. Instead of killing him, it is better to kill him. Rather than killing him, it's better to let him use the rest of his life to make up for the sins he has committed. Evil Moon, I think you should understand what I mean. Evil Moon looked at Kageosius, feeling the huge dragon aura emanating from him. His eyes were filled with sorrow. His eyes were filled with intense sorrow. "Yes, you're right. I realized it too late. I've been pursuing my dreams for many years, but I've neglected the most precious thing to me. The moment Cena died, my ambition was shattered. I don't know why, but all the things in the past disappeared like smoke in my eyes. In fact, if you kill me, I'll be happy. That way, I can go see Cena." Kageosius sighed softly and said, "No, we won't kill you. If you really feel that you were wrong in the past, then you need to repent. Repent with your own actions. I hope you can understand what I mean. You lost your wife, but you still have your daughter. I think you won't let your daughter go down the same path as you did in the past. Take your daughter and leave. Do what a father should do." Evil Moon shook his head and said, "Thank you, Dark Dragon King. Thank you for allowing me a chance to be reborn. However, I won't take you away. I don't deserve to be her father. I actually had to sacrifice my daughter to fulfill my dream. From that moment on, I was no longer worthy of being her father. Please, when she wakes up, tell her that her father has followed her mother. If she wants to hate, let her hate me. No matter where, I will pray for Yu. Taking a deep look at Yu in the saint's arms, Evil Moon suddenly struck his right shoulder with a backhand palm, forcibly tearing off his right arm. There was no blood spurting out. The black mist stopped the blood from flowing. His actions startled the 7 Dragon Kings, but Evil Moon didn't do anything. He held his right arm in his left hand and handed it to Kageosius. Although his forehead was covered with cold sweat, he didn't even make a sound. Kageosius frowned and said, "What are you doing?" Evil Moon calmly glanced at them and said, "If I was still the Evil Moon of the past, I'm afraid none of you would be able to leave here alive today. However, I'm no longer the Evil Lord. I'll give you my right arm, but you have to be careful not to release the thing inside. I think you must have a way to deal with those things. I'll be leaving now. Please take care of my daughter. No matter what she chooses in the future, let her be. Her lover is over there, sealed by my magic. Thank you for forgiving me." After bowing deeply, Evil Moon floated away in the black mist, leaving nothing behind. Kageosius was stunned for a moment. He looked at the other Dragon Kings around him. At this time, Feng Nu and Lan Chun, who had recovered a little, flew over. Feng Nu said, "Let's leave this place first. However, the ice valley here must be repaired. Otherwise, once the ice erupts again, it will affect the continent." Longling had already flown over when Kgosius and Evil Moon were talking. She was beside Oscar, looking at Nian Bing and the ice spirit with concern. Hearing Feng Nu's words, she hurriedly said, "Leave this matter to me. Although the two true gods just now injured me and the other magicians, our strength is still there. In this environment, only we ice magicians can survive better. I think, within a certain period of time, we can restore the ice valley to its original state." 100 ice magicians, in this world of ice and snow, indeed had the strength to do so, although it would take a long time. 2 days later, Ice Moon Empire, Ice Moon City. When Yin Bing's consciousness gradually recovered, she felt the warmth of the surroundings. The messy thoughts in her mind were gradually straightened out as her mind became clearer. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a spacious room. The room was very warm. She was lying on a spacious bed. The decorations in the room were very simple. There was even an incense burner on the table beside the bed, emitting a faint fragrance. How'd I get here? Is everything already over? She didn't see the final scene, but she could vaguely remember what had happened. Amidst her suspicions, she quickly checked her body. She was shocked to find that her body had changed again. The biggest change was in her brain. At that time, when she was facing the two overgods who had hurt her mother, Nian Bing's brain was filled with hot blood. At that time, she only thought of protecting her mother and avenging her. Under such circumstances, if the two overgods were allowed to continue their attack, not only would the ceremony to open the seal not be completed, none of the humans present would be able to leave this place alive. Therefore, Nian Bing told the Valley Dragon that he wanted to take a gamble. He wanted to gamble with his life. As it turned out, he made the right bet. What did Nian Bing bet on? He bet on his Celestial Eye Acupoint, which had merged two acupoints. Not only was there the Celestial Eye Acupoint, there was also the Huangji Acupoint. These two acupoints had both reached the ultimate level, but Nian Bing's energy broke through in an instant. He chose to explode the acupoint. Yes, explode his two most powerful acupoints. At that time, Nian Bing didn't care about the consequences. He knew that with the ultimate level of the Celestial Eye Acupoint and the Huangji Acupoint, as long as he could obtain the energy produced by exploding either acupoint, it would be a threat to the two overgods. Therefore, he chose to gamble. He firmly believed that he wouldn't die. As long as there was pure life energy in his chest, unless his body was crushed, he definitely wouldn't die. Therefore, he chose to explode the acupoint. At the moment of exploding the acupoint, Nian Bing didn't feel the pain that he had imagined. He also didn't feel the splattering of blood like other overgods. When he used all his spiritual energy to break through the Celestial Eye Acupoint, he shockingly discovered that his restricted spiritual energy had returned. Furthermore, there was an additional strange energy in his spiritual energy. Ling Nian Bing was pleasantly surprised to find that the Huangji Acupoint was actually separated from the Celestial Eye Acupoint. This allowed him to unleash a powerful attack when he faced Gulong for the first time. Not only did the Celestial Eye Acupoint contain the Huangji Acupoint's energy, the Huangji Acupoint also contained the Celestial Eye Acupoint's energy. At the instant when the Huangji Acupoint's energy was released, Nian Bing clearly discovered that the Huangji Acupoint's golden light was actually able to analyze the strength of Gulong's attack. Following that, he didn't hesitate to launch a physical spiritual attack. That was a delightful and extremely dangerous attack. Gulong's strength at the 14th step was extremely difficult to deal with. Nian Bing knew that his greatest advantage was his spiritual energy. Otherwise, even if he had the same ultimate Huangji Acupoint, he wouldn't be able to defeat Gulong. Therefore, while Gulong was shocked, the same golden light appeared. Because everything happened too quickly, Gulong didn't have time to think before using his own Huangji Acupoint to face the attack. However, spiritual energy and battle chi were two completely different concepts. His Huangji Acupoint attack was easily penetrated by spiritual energy. Then Gulong died. Originally, Even if Nian Bing had a physical spiritual attack, he wouldn't have been killed so easily. However, under the circumstances at that time, because of his own psychological changes, he was actually killed by Nian Bing. However, Nian Bing also didn't have a good time. Although the effect of a physical spiritual attack was very good, if the enemy's spiritual energy was stronger than his, then the one to be blown up could only be himself. Gulong's spiritual energy couldn't be compared to Nian Bing's, but he was after all a master god who had existed for more than 10,000 years. Nian Bing killed him in one blow. His own spiritual energy was also severely damaged. However, under the circumstances at that time, Nian Bing didn't have the time to stop. As such, he immediately appeared in front of the goddess of misfortune Xiaoyu and unleashed another substantial spiritual attack. Although Xiaoyu didn't say a word, his judgment was clearly better than Gulong's. When he saw the golden eye between Nian Bing's eyebrows, he knew that something was wrong. He immediately made the decision to activate the Huangji acupoint in his left arm and used that instant to escape the scene. In fact, Xiaoyu was a little too careful. Under the circumstances at that time, Nian Bing's spiritual energy was already quite damaged. Even if Xiaoyu wasn't his match, if he chose to escape directly, Xiaoyu wouldn't be able to catch him. Nian Bing might not have the ability to chase after Xiaoyu, but in order to preserve her life, Xiaoyu used the most reliable method, which resulted in her body being severely injured. However, after forcing Xiaoyu to retreat, Nian Bing's spiritual power was also severely shaken by the combined attack of Xiaoyu's Huangji acupoint and his own spiritual power. In addition to the injuries he had suffered previously, he directly fainted. Thinking back to what happened when he fainted, Nian Bing couldn't help but smile faintly. Killing an overgod and scaring off an overgod with his own strength. This probably hadn't happened even during the Great War of the Gods. Now, Nian Bing could clearly feel that the heavenly eye between his eyebrows and the Huangji acupoints had fused into one. However, what was different from before was that as long as he willed it, the physical attack of his spiritual energy would still exist. Furthermore, he could launch different attacks according to his will. It could be physical spiritual energy or physical energy from the Huangji acupoint. This change imperceptibly increased Nian Bing's strength greatly. Now, even if he met an overgod again, he wouldn't have anything to fear. His body also seemed to have some changes. A faint golden light flowed under his skin, and the mana in his body seemed to have become more domineering than before. It followed his will and formed a direct link with the outside world. What Ling Nianbing was most excited about was that the explosion of his two acupoints this time didn't have any consequences. It was as if those two acupoints had never exploded in the first place. Furthermore, the West Meridian acupoint's ability had increased a little under the influence of their explosion. It was developing towards the ultimate realm. It seemed that this time he had profited from a disaster. After a short moment of joy, Nian Bing quickly calmed down. The first thing he thought about was the final outcome after the seal was broken. A thoughtful look appeared in his eyes as he moved his body and sat up on the bed. His whole body was light as a feather, and his brain felt a little dizzy. He stood up and did some simple exercises in the room. He immediately felt a lot better. This time, he didn't know how long he had been lying down, so his blood and qi were inevitably not flowing smoothly. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from outside. The energy in Nian Bing's Tian Yin acupoint moved slightly, and his psychic energy became his eyes. He just happened to see Feng Nu and Lan Chun walking toward his room together. He hurriedly turned back to the bed and laid down on the bed again. The door opened, and Feng Nu and Lan Chun each came in with a tray. Both of their faces were a little heavy. They walked to the bed and put down the tray. Feng Nu carefully lifted the quilt and sighed softly. "You've been in a coma for more than 10 days. Aren't you going to wake up soon?" Lan Chun smiled and said, "Sister, don't worry. Didn't Senior Kageyoshi say that Nian Bing's body is fine and that he hasn't suffered any injuries? He will definitely wake up soon." Feng Nu said, You only know how to talk about me. Do you think I can't see the worry in your heart? Nian Bing, and that miss you are really capable. They have returned to Ice Moon City for more than 10 days, and neither of them has woken up yet. Sigh, the lost continent might have already returned to this world. I don't know how it is over there. Now that Nian Bing hasn't woken up yet, how can we rush over? Lan Chen sighed softly and said, let's wait a little longer. Mother's injuries are almost healed, and Ling Er's side should have already repaired the ice valley. If Nian Bing still can't wake up by then, we can only go to the lost continent to take a look. Fortunately, Nian Bing made preparations in advance, and let Ice Moon and Allen send a large number of troops to guard the Tianding mountain range. We can still be at ease. Feng Nu carefully helped Nian Bing take off his clothes and picked up a warm towel from the small basin on the tray and wiped Nian Bing's firm chest. Little sister, feed him something. Lan Chen agreed and picked up a bowl from the tray he brought over. A faint blush appeared on his face, and he drank a mouthful first. Then, he moved closer to Nian Bing's mouth, kissed his lips, and carefully passed the food over. A gust of Xiantian qi, accompanied by the fragrance of the food, entered Nian Bing's mouth. Under the effect of the Xiantian qi, the food was sent into Nian Bing's stomach. Delicious. The taste is really not bad. This should be the taste of ginseng chicken soup. It is really very nutritious. However, the taste of Qinshin's cold and soft lips was even better. After the battle, tasting the food that his beloved wife passed to him with her mouth, Ling Nian Bing felt a burst of warmth in his heart. He subconsciously kissed Lan Chen's lips back and was reluctant to leave no matter what. Lan Chen felt Nian Bing's kiss back, and her tender body stiffened at first. Then, she immediately hugged Nian Bing's neck and responded enthusiastically. Her husband's waking up made her heart full of joy. Nian Bing, you're awake? Feng Nu also felt the changes in Nian Bing's body. Nian Bing woke up and let go of Lan Chen, allowing her to leave his body. Looking at the pair of beautiful sisters in front of him, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Lan Chen's pretty face was slightly red, and she looked at Nian Bing and asked in a low voice, how are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Nian Bing sat up, one in each hand, and hugged the two sisters, saying, nothing. I just ate your elixir. How can I feel uncomfortable? Leaning against Nian Bing's warm embrace, Feng Nu and Lan Chen's worried hearts finally relaxed. In the warmth, they didn't say anything. After a while, Feng Nu seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly broke free from Nian Bing's embrace, and said in a bad mood, tell us, how do you want us to punish you? Nian Bing was stunned for a moment, and said with a smile, Feng Nu, you still haven't forgotten. You see, I just woke up, and my body is still weak, so this punishment can be waived. It can't be waived. You actually abandoned us and ran away alone. Do you still want to not be punished? Lan Chen also struggled out of Nian Bing's embrace, and looked at Nian Bing with a sullen face. Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, actually, I didn't do it on purpose. The main thing is it's a little too late. Feng Nu snorted and said, don't play dumb in front of us. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Nian Bing, I know you're afraid that we'll be in danger, but have you ever thought about what would happen to us if something happened to you? Looking at Feng Nu's slightly red eyes, Nian Bing felt apologetic in her heart. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I promise there will never be a next time. Lan Chen looked at Nian Bing's embarrassed face and couldn't help but laugh, saying, you still want a next time? It seems that our punishment will have to be heavier. Wow, it can't be, right? Feng Nu said with a smile. How about this? Our punishment can't be too heavy. After all, your body is still very weak. She deliberately emphasized the word weak. Since your body is so weak, then for a certain period of time, you're not allowed to be intimate with us so as not to affect your injuries. This punishment is very light. Nian Bing said in a silly way, this certain period of time is long? In fact, my body is very weak. It's not a problem to be intimate, don't you know? Intimacy can promote blood circulation and help injuries, right? Feng Nu snorted and said, you wish, since you're weak, take good care of yourself. As for this certain period of time, it depends on your performance. If you perform well, maybe I'll lift the ban for you in a year. What? Nian Bing exclaimed. It takes a year to perform well, then you might as well kill me. Looking at delicacies in front of me, but not being able to eat, I can't stand this feeling. Feng Nu and Lan Chen's pretty faces turned red at the same time. Lan Chen said, "Okay, let's see your performance first." Nian Bing saw that Lan Chen was a little relaxed and knew that they were just joking with her. So she took the two girls' little hands and said with a smile, "How did you know I went there? I didn't tell you where I was going." Feng Nu smiled and said, "You can't escape from our hands in this lifetime. If you don't tell us, don't we ask? After you left that day, Linger, and I felt that something was wrong. After you left, Linger, and I also went to the Ice God Tower. We talked with Father and Mother there. We guessed what you were going to do. There was still time, although we didn't know where you went, but when we thought about it, you must be going to participate in the ceremony to open the seal. As for the location, the 7 Dragon King seniors naturally know. If we can find them, we can naturally find you." Nian Bing suddenly realized. Only now did she understand that the 7 Dragon Kings had betrayed her. Her mind moved slightly, and she said, "So, you went to the Ice Valley with the 7 Dragon Kings? But their purpose is the opposite of ours. Didn't they stop you?" Lan Chen chuckled and said, "Fool, if the 7 Dragon King seniors really want to stop you, do you really think the last seal could be opened smoothly?" Nian Bing's heart moved, and she suddenly understood something. At this moment, a deep voice came from outside. "Let me talk to you about this matter, then you will understand." The door opened, and the Fire Dragon King Garamandes walked in with a smile on his face. Looking at the sober Nian Bing, his excitement was no less than Feng Nu and Lan Chen's. Feng Nu hurriedly made way for Garamandes to sit down. Garamandes looked at Nian Bing and said slowly, "Actually, a month before the ceremony started, those gods found us. After all, we belong to the continent of gods. Not to mention that there were 2 main gods at that time. Under their request, we couldn't refuse to stop Miordas from opening the seal of the seal bottle. But at this point, a mysterious smile appeared on Garamandes' face. Chapter 225. "But what?" Nian Bing asked doubtfully. Garamandes chuckled and said, "But before they came, we had already communicated with Lord Dragon God. We told your idea to Lord Dragon God, and after careful consideration, we decided to help you. After all, we are brothers, not enemies. What's more, everything you said was exactly what Lord Dragon God was worried about. Therefore, things went a lot smoother." Nian Bing felt a warmth in her heart. The Dragon King and the Dragon King loved her like an elder. On the battlefield at that time, the Dragon King was indeed a force that could change the whole situation. Garamandes laughed and said, "Don't look at me with such grateful eyes. I won't like you. My sexual orientation is very normal." Nian Bing's face stiffened. "Go to hell." After saying these 3 words, the 2 of them couldn't help but look at each other and laugh loudly. Garamandes said, "You more or less know what kind of character the gods of that world were. Not only were they selfish, but they were also very arrogant. Especially after coming to the continent of Yangon, they didn't encounter any resistance. Each of them was like a heifer that had grown wings. They unanimously asked the Lord God to be the vanguard, and said that with their strength, they could completely solve the problem. Although we didn't know what kind of power you had in your hands, we understood the strength of you and Halogen. In addition, Feng Nu and the others, as well as the Ice Moon Empire, who had a good relationship with you, might not be at a disadvantage. Naturally, we didn't stop them from being foolish and let them be. Sure enough, when they rushed over aggressively that day, we watched from afar. We saw you show off your invincible might and kill them until they couldn't do anything at all. I've seen the god-killing crossbow you designed. It's really powerful. If we faced it head-on, even we might not have a good result. Later, when the 2 Lord Gods saw that they couldn't take the situation, they couldn't hold on any longer. We have already discussed this with Feng Nu and the others in advance. The moment we appear, they will appear at the same time. In this stalemate, a few of the gods were killed by Feng Nu and Chun Chun, and we didn't have the strength to defeat you in this stalemate. We had to stall for time so that the 2 master gods had to come out. Actually, it was already too late for us to make a move. If it wasn't for your sudden mutation, I'm afraid we would have officially betrayed the continent of gods." Nian Bing naturally understood the meaning behind Garamandes' words. If the situation at that time had not improved, the 7 dragon kings would have joined forces with their own people to attack the 2 lords. Of course, they were afraid that the gods would destroy the Yangon continent in the future, but wasn't it also for themselves? Where could he find such a brother? Garamandes chuckled. You're becoming more and more monstrous, kid. You're even more monstrous than we thought. You can even insta-kill a master god. However, we didn't see how you did it. Nian Bing smiled. Naturally, it's the spiritual energy in the Tian Yin acupoint. Big brother, you should have heard of spiritual energy materialization attacks, right? Garamandes was surprised. You're saying? That golden light you unleashed at that time was spiritual energy? No wonder. No wonder even the god of sorrows, Huangji acupoint, couldn't resist your attack. After all, that's the power of 2 domains. Nian Bing nodded. Spiritual energy attacks are very sudden. However, if that master god was prepared, I might not have been able to kill him so easily. The funny thing is that the god of sorrow was actually so scared by my spiritual energy materialization attacks that he was willing to explode his Huangji acupoint. Furthermore, he only set up a barrier and didn't attack me. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have been in trouble. A rank 14 Earth God is really not that easy to deal with. Fortunately, only 2 came this time, and they cherished their lives so much. Big brother, what happened after I fainted? Did Miorda's seal break? Garamandes' expression became serious. He nodded and said, the seal was successfully broken. From that day onwards, we don't know about other places. In any case, the Ice Moon Empire has been in a state of slight earthquake. If my guess is correct, the lost continent has already returned. We have been waiting for you to wake up, so we immediately rushed over to take a look. Also, that little girl who cast the spell that day fainted after the spell ended. That evil moon gave us a huge shock. His wife died in order to save his daughter. After seeing his wife die, he actually changed into a different person. At first, I didn't believe that he would suddenly change so much, thinking that he had some kind of conspiracy. But later, he cut off his arm and gave it to Kathy. Only then did I understand that he really regretted it. Nian Bing said in surprise. Evil Moon regretted it? Then who became the master of the lost continent? Garamandes shrugged his shoulders and said, we don't know. Now, none of us have figured out the specific situation at that time, because only that little girl called Yu could completely feel the changes when the seal was broken. Perhaps we can only wait for her to wake up from her deep sleep before we can get the answer. At least on the surface, it seems that no one has obtained the legendary master of the lost continent. Oh, by the way, do you know what was in the arm that Evil Moon gave to Kathy? That guy is really insidious. Fortunately, his temperament changed at that time. Otherwise, it's hard to predict what would happen in the end. Nian Bing's heart was moved. She had felt that Evil Moon should be hiding something, but she couldn't figure out how strong he was. Hearing Garamandes' words, she hurriedly asked, what is it? Garamandes said in a deep voice, that thing is very scary. I'm afraid you haven't heard of it. Even I have seen it for the first time. If Kathy Osis didn't originally belong to the Dark World, I'm afraid we wouldn't know the origin of that thing. Evil Moon destroyed his arm and planted a special seed in it. This thing feeds on his essence and blood every day. It's called the magic seed. After thousands of years of cultivation, the magic seed gradually grew a strange plant. This plant has no offensive power. However, during the process of its growth, it would produce an extremely special venom. Other than the master who nurtured it, any other creature that came into contact with it would definitely die. You could understand it as a corrosive venom, but the strength of this venom was unstoppable by anything. Anything. Nian Bing's heart was moved, and she said, even magic and fighting energy can't do it? Garamandes nodded solemnly and said, yes, magic and fighting energy can't do it. That thing can corrode anything, including energy. Once Evil Moon explodes his arm, he releases that venom. Within a certain range, wherever the venom passes, nothing can stop it. Even our dragon scales can't do it. Moreover, the most vicious thing about this venom is that once it touches your body, you won't even have a chance to cut off your arm. It only takes a moment for your body to completely disappear, and the venom will also disappear at the same time. This kind of extreme, and evil venom is completely destructive. Nian Bing sucked in a breath of cold air. He knew that with Evelmoon's strength, once the venom exploded in that situation, she was afraid that no one could survive on the field except for himself. He cultivated this evil thing for thousands of years at the cost of his own body. Perhaps only this master of the evil world could do it. Garamendi smiled and said, "So this thing can't even be stored. It can only be safe in Evil Moon's arm." Now, Kathy is thinking about how to deal with Evil Moon's evil hand. Alas, this thing is simply a hot potato. No matter where it is, it's hard to be at ease, unless it's used to destroy. Nian Bing's eyes flashed coldly and said, "This thing of Evil Moon was originally used to deal with the gods. Then, let's fulfill his wish. The Lost Continent has returned. It has become a bridge between the godly mainland and the Yangon continent. The King God has escaped, and I'm afraid they won't let it go easily. I think we should go to the Lost Continent as soon as possible and see the situation there. In fact, I've always been a little worried about the situation of the Lost Continent. If it develops like it did during the War of the Gods 10,000 years ago, today, after 10,000 years, their horror is not less than that of the godly mainland. Now, I just hope that the people of the Lost Continent can be more rational than those gods. Although the Lost Continent has returned, our plan can be said to have failed." The failure he referred to was that he couldn't become the master of the Lost Continent. Now, the Lost Continent was equivalent to being out of control. Feng Nu suddenly said, "That's not necessarily true. I think the legend of the Lost Continent is not necessarily false. Perhaps the real master of the Lost Continent has already appeared." Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu, and Feng Nu was also looking at him. His brain, which had recovered from the coma, was operating at high speed. Nian Bing immediately understood who Feng Nu was referring to. He nodded and said, "You're right. The girl who launched the spell is most likely to become the new master of the Lost Continent. However, she is the daughter of Evil Moon. Evil Moon has already awakened, but Feng Nu sighed softly and said, "You don't need to worry too much about this. When we brought her back, she also had a companion called Ping Chao, who is a vampire count. Although Ping Chao is a vampire, his evil aura is not strong. We talked with him and also learned what happened between Evil Moon and his daughter. This month of evil was really vicious. The spell he got needed a Saintess of Absolute Een to complete. In order to complete the spell, he deliberately gave birth to his daughter, Yu Yu, with a vampire queen. Not long ago, he forced his own daughter to be his sacrifice to complete the spell. According to Ping Chao, although Yu Yu is usually a little childish, she did not inherit her father's evil. So, when Yu Yu wakes up, I think we should have a good talk with her and listen to her feelings about the Lost Continent." Nian Bing sighed and said, "Another poor child. Although she has parents, it's better not to have them." Hearing Yu Yu's experience, he couldn't help but think of himself in his childhood. He suddenly had a good impression of Yu Yu. It was not the first time he saw Yu Yu. That time, when Yu Yu and Kitty had a conflict, he just happened to arrive. Although they only met face to face, with his memory, he still remembered Yu Yu's appearance. Garamendi said, "Let's wait for 3 more days. If this Yu Yu girl still doesn't wake up, we can only take her to the edge of the Lost Continent to have a look. I don't know whether our choice is right or not, but the war between the Lost Continent and the Godly Continent is inevitable." Nian Bing nodded. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked Feng Nu. That day, Big Brother Halogen was knocked out. "How is he now?" Feng Nu smiled and said, "Don't worry, Big Brother Halogen's armor defense is very strong. He's fine." Before returning to Ice Moon City, he had already woken up. Now his injury has already recovered. Right now, the only person who isn't worried about the Lost Continent is him. These few days, he's been extremely excited. If it wasn't for the fact that you're still unconscious, I think he would have already run to the Lost Continent. Nian Bing sighed in relief and said, "Chun Chun, I'll have to trouble you to go to the Imperial Palace and ask Yin Feng about the situation at the Tiandang mountain range for me. I'll go see that Yu Yu girl now." As he said that, he took out the keepsake that Yin Feng gave him from the spatial ring and handed it to Lan Shen. Lansha nodded and turned to leave. Nian Bing stood up and moved his body again. Under the lead of Feng Nu and Garamandes, he walked towards the room where Yu Yu was staying. The place where they were staying was a big hotel. When they first returned to Ice Moon City, because of the special identity of the 7 Dragon Kings and the fact that Nian Bing's subordinates were from the Bloodline sect, Bing Ling made the decision to book the entire hotel and temporarily stay here. After more than 10 days, the slight earthquake had already disappeared. Because Bing Ling was worried about her son's safety, he didn't return to the Ice God Tower. This time, when she brought people out, the funny thing was that she actually left her husband, Nian Bing's father, Rong Tian, in the Ice God Tower with some junior disciples to guard there. One had to know that Rong Tian was a fire magician. Yu Yu stayed in a dark room. This was specially requested by Ping Chao. They were people who lived in the dark and were very sensitive to sunlight. If they were exposed to too much sunlight, it would cause quite a bit of damage to their bodies. When Nian Bing and the other 2 knocked on the door, the one who opened the door was actually Kitty. When Kitty saw that Nian Bing had woken up, she immediately became as happy as a little bird. She chattered nonstop, causing Nian Bing to feel awkward. On the other hand, Feng Nu didn't intend to help her. She smiled as she looked at the kitty who had already matured into a young lady, but still had a childish temper and acted coquettishly with Nian Bing. Garamandes rubbed Kitty's head and said, "Little girl, you must be proud of yourself now. You actually killed 6 gods in one go. There was even a 13th level expert among them. Facts have proven that you have already taken over your father's position as the #1 summoning magician on the continent." When she heard Garamandes mention her father, the smile on Kitty's face immediately disappeared. She lowered her head and said, "I have finally avenged my father and mother. Those people who killed them have already been killed by my little pets. I think my father will be very happy when he finds out." Nian Bing hugged Kitty's shoulder and consoled her. "Kitty, be good. Don't be sad. Uncle Hillard also hopes that you will always be happy. Be happy." Kitty lightly nodded and suddenly said, "Oh, right, Nian Bing Gidge. My father is no longer here. I'm the only one left in the white race. According to our contract with the dragons, I can also choose one of the 7 Dragon King to be my companion. I have already made my choice." Nian Bing looked at her in surprise. Kitty was already strong enough. The strength of her summons added together was extremely terrifying, especially with the assistance of the fox's magic. If a Dragon King was added to the mix, she might directly rise to the 14th level. "Then who will Kitty choose?" Kitty giggled and said, "I can't choose Uncle Katerios. He is the future dragon god, and I can't choose Aunt Demantetti either. She can't leave Uncle Katerios. I also can't choose Uncle Katerios. He has already helped us white race a lot. It's time for him to rest. Aunt Sasaris is too cold. Kitty is a bit afraid of her. As for Big Fatso, he looks like he can eat a lot. Kitty is afraid that he will eat me poor. Uncle Garamandes has a wife, so I can't choose him. Naturally, I will choose the remaining one." Nian Bing laughed and said, "Kitty, you call the Dragon King uncles, but now I call them big brothers. Isn't our seniority a bit messy?" "Wow, what did you say? Don't tell me you chose that Space Dragon King Kadires who likes to sow discord?" He looked at Kitty in surprise. The weakest of the 7 Dragon Kings is Kadires. This Space Dragon King only has the ability to escape. He is the strongest of the 7 Dragon Kings. Thinking that Kadires' degree of lasciviousness is not inferior to Fox, Nian Bing thought of those filthy men who specialize in seducing little girls. Garamandes looked at Nian Bing with a smile that is not a smile and said, "Brother, don't think that your precious little sister is at a disadvantage. Actually, the one who is at a disadvantage is that guy, Kadires. You didn't see it. These few days, that lazy guy Kadires was tortured by Kitty to the point that he wants to die." Nian Bing looked at Garamandes in surprise. But Kitty said with some embarrassment, Actually, I didn't do anything. Uncle Kadires is very good to me. Whatever I tell him to do, he will do it. Moreover, we should have signed an equal contract, but he was careless. At that time, he was too excited. He said the wrong incantation. It became a master-slave contract. He became a pet like my little pets." Nian Bing opened her eyes wide. No way. Kadiri's even made this kind of mistake? Actually, Kadiri's was too excited at that time. When he heard that such a beautiful little girl like Kitty had chosen him, he was too excited. When he was chanting the incantation, he didn't pay too much attention. In a short while, the equal contract became a master-slave contract. He became Kitty's real pet and not her partner. These few days, Kadiri's was depressed to death. One must know that under the effect of the master-slave contract, he had already lost his freedom. As long as Kitty was willing, she could make him do anything. He had no ability to resist. Garamandes laughed. That guy Kadiri's deserved it. Who told him to be too excited? His mind was full of filth. This time, it was time for him to suffer a little. With the restriction of the master-slave contract, even if he becomes a member of the evil world, he can't harm his master. This time, you can rest assured. Let's go. We will go in and see Yu. When everyone arrived at the inner room, Ping Chao, who was sitting on the bed, hastily stood up. His tall stature was somewhat reserved, and his expression when looking at Nianbing was somewhat strange. Actually, this couldn't be blamed on him. When he learned that Nianbing had destroyed 2 main gods by herself, Nianbing's appearance naturally gave him an invisible pressure. Nianbing walked to Ping Chao's side and looked at Yu, who was lying on the bed. Yu was lying there. Her expression was very calm. Her eyes were closed, her eyelashes were long, her face was rosy, and her chest was slightly moving up and down, showing that she was still alive. Her current appearance was very peaceful. Nianbing's psychic power swept Yu's body through the Tian Yin acupoint and immediately sensed a strange energy emitting from Yu's body. His psychic power was unexpectedly unable to penetrate her body. He couldn't help but be shocked by this discovery. How is she? Is there still no sign of her waking up? Nianbing asked Ping Chao. Ping Chao sighed and said, since the completion of the incantation that day, she has been like this. Occasionally, she would let out some sleep-talking sounds, but I couldn't hear what she was saying. Your people have already tried several times to use their energy to wake her up. However, there seems to be an invisible energy inside Yu's body, preventing your people from transferring their energy into her body. Nianbing nodded and said, it seems that she has to wake up on her own. Ping Chao seemed to want to say something, but didn't say it. He looked at Nianbing with a trace of hesitation in his eyes. Nianbing smiled and said, if you have something to say, just say it. Everyone is here. I don't treat you as an enemy. Even Xie you can repent, let alone you. The evil aura on your body is not heavy, so you shouldn't have done too many outrageous things. I can see that you are very concerned about Yu. Ping Chao nodded and said, I've watched Yu grow up since she was a child. She should have called me uncle. She should have called me by my name. After all, I am the servant of the Demon Lord. However, since Yu has the ability to speak, she has always been willing to call me Big Brother. I really miss the way she used to call me. This time, the blow Yu received was too big. Before she opened the seal, I could feel the despair in her heart. She was completely disappointed in her parents. Now, Sina is dead, and the Demon Lord is gone. I am afraid. I am afraid that she will not be able to bear it when she wakes up. Nianbing, you're Nianbing, right? I hope that if Yu wakes up, you will let us leave. You can rest assured that we will not do anything evil. Can you? Nianbing looked at Ping Chao's urgent eyes. He smiled faintly and said, what's wrong with that? I don't have the right to restrict your freedom. However, there's one thing I have to say in advance. Miordas's sealing bottle opened under Yu's incantation. The lost continent should have returned to this world. I hope that after Yu wakes up, you can persuade her to tell us the situation at that time. The lost continent for our Yangon continent. We don't know whether it is a disaster or a blessing. We must be prepared first. Then, you can leave. We won't stop you. Ping Chao thought for a moment, said, I can't promise you this. If Yu doesn't want to say it, how can I force her? I can only say that I will try to persuade her. We are different. You belong to the righteous, and we are evil. Nianbing interrupted Ping Chao's words. What is righteousness? What is evil? Under certain conditions, justice and evil can transform each other. I have never looked down on you. I also hope that you can value yourself. Evil Moon is gone, and you have no intention to continue his evil career. Under this premise, I think we can be friends." Ping Chao looked at Nian Bing in surprise. Nian Bing also looked at him with a smile. He saw sincerity from the smile, sincerity without any impurities. With a sigh, Ping Chao said, "Perhaps Yu Yu is right. I should not belong to the dark world. Thank you, friend. You have calmed my heart a lot." As he said, he reached out his hand to Nian Bing. However, when he saw the pitch-black nails on his hand, he instinctively retracted his hand. However, at this moment, Nian Bing's strong hand had already grabbed his cold hand. "Believe me, we will become friends. Let's wait for Yu Yu to wake up. It's over. For you, what you will face is a new beginning. You and Yu Yu will be reborn, won't you?" Ping Chao smiled. After coming here, his face showed a smile for the first time. "Thank you. As long as Yu Yu can wake up, it will be the greatest gift from God to me. Yes, we have been reborn. We no longer belong to anyone but ourselves." Nian Bing looked at Ping Chao's smile and knew that he must have untied some knot in his heart. When Ping Chao looked at Yu Yu, he saw a kind of look similar to his own. This kind of look only appeared when he looked at his wife. Taking a step forward, Nian Bing sat down on Yu Yu's bed. Kitty came to his side and whispered, "Nian Bing Gij, you have to find a way to save her. Let her wake up quickly." Nian Bing looked at Kitty and said with a smile, "I remember that you two had a fight. Don't you hate her?" Kitty shook her head and said, "I only hate those murderers who killed our people. Yu Yu is so pitiful. She and Kitty are the same. They don't have a father and a mother. How can I hate her? I just hope that she can wake up soon." Kitty's kindness touched the hearts of everyone present. Nian Bing took Yu Yu's hand and held her wrist. He didn't inject his innate qi or his own magic elements. He slowly closed his eyes, and a soft green light gradually lit up on his chest. Including Ping Chao, everyone in the room clearly felt a very comfortable feeling. It was as if a warm spring breeze was blowing on their bodies. That warm feeling instantly spread all over their bodies. After a while, their bodies showed different degrees of changes. Ping Chao felt it the most. Because he hadn't sucked blood for many days, he was now very weak. But in this breath full of life, the discomfort in his body disappeared in an instant. It was a strange feeling. Everything around him became so beautiful. The soft green light enveloped Nian Bing's body. Nian Bing didn't directly inject it into Yu Yu's body. Instead, he controlled the green qi to surround Yu Yu's body and carefully penetrated her body through her skin. No matter what kind of energy a person cultivated, as long as they were living creatures, the breath of life was very important to them. Only the undead would be afraid of this kind of pure life energy. When everyone in the room felt the breath full of life, Yu Yu's body suddenly trembled. Her hand, which was held by Nian Bing, suddenly grabbed Nian Bing's wrist. Her long fingernails pierced Nian Bing's skin. Fortunately, Nian Bing's skin was extremely tough. It was only sunken, but not damaged. Brother Ping Chao, Mom, don't die." In the exclamation, Yu Yu suddenly sat up. Her eyes were full of fear, and her forehead was covered with a layer of fine sweat in an instant. Ping Chao hurried forward, resisting the excitement in his heart. He took Yu Yu's hand from Nian Bing and said softly, "Yu Yu, Brother Ping Chao is here. I'm here. How are you? Are you better?" Yu Yu's chest rose and fell quickly. Her lifeless eyes gradually recovered some spirit. Looking at Ping Chao beside her, and then looking at Nian Bing and others in front of the bed, her mind was quickly recovering. Garamandes just wanted to say something, but was stopped by Nian Bing. Nian Bing whispered, "She just woke up. Let her rest for a while. Let's go back first." Yu Yu's mental state was not very good. Besides, Nian Bing hoped that Ping Chao could persuade her to tell what happened at that time. Now is not the time to be anxious. Garamandes nodded. The two people, Feng Nu and Kitty, were just about to leave when they heard Yu Yu's cold voice. "Don't go. I have something to say." Nian Bing looked back at Yu Yu and saw that her eyes had calmed down. Her hand were holding Ping Chao's big hand tightly. She looked at Nian Bing and others and said, "What about my father? Was he killed by you?" Nian Bing asked, If I told you that Evil Moon had been killed by us, what would you do? A smile appeared on Yu Yu's face, and she gave an incredible answer. I would be very happy. He shouldn't have existed in this world. Chapter 2:26. Nian Bing shuddered. Do you hate him that much? Yu Yu faintly said, I have repaid what I owed him. He gave me life, and I also used my life to help him once. Between us, we don't owe each other anything. I have nothing to do with him. If there is anything, there is only hatred. Mother died to protect me. If it weren't for him, Mother wouldn't have died. Until that moment, I didn't know that Mother loved me. Nian Bing sighed. It seems that your memory is only retained at the time of your mother's death. You said you have something to say. What do you want to say to us? Yu Yu gradually calmed down and faintly said, You cooperated with my father for the sake of the lost continent. No matter what your purpose is, I think you want to know the situation of the lost continent. And the real situation, I'm afraid only I know. I'll tell you now. Wait a minute. Garamandes suddenly stopped Yu Yu from speaking. Looking at Yu Yu's murderous eyes, he said, Girl, before you speak, let me tell you what happened after you fell into a coma. Maybe it will be good for you. At that moment, he told Yu Shiyue's last words, as well as the fact that he gave the arm with a magic seed to Catiriosis in detail. When Garamandes talked about the few words that Shiyue said before he left, Yu Yu's expression changed slightly. There was a bit of sadness in the coldness. He said that? He actually gave up what he wanted most. Yu Yu's eyes were full of doubts. Garamandes said, I didn't want to believe your father at first, but everything I said is true. This can't be changed. Yu Yu indifferently said, So what? He has already done it. There is no medicine for regret in the world. Can he let my mother be reborn? Ping Chao clenched Yu Yu's hand and whispered, Yu Yu, don't be like this. I think the demon lord must have thought it through. Yu Yu shook her head and said, Whether he thinks it through or not has nothing to do with me. From the moment I started to chant the first incantation, I was no longer his daughter. Now, I'm an orphan without parents. Brother Pingxiang, do you still want me? Yes, of course. Unless I die. Otherwise, I will always be by your side to protect you. Ping Chao excitedly held Yu Yu tightly, as if he wanted to use his heart to warm Yu Yu's cold aura. Yu Yu's spirit was lifted up a little, and she gently broke free from Ping Chao's arms. He looked at Nian Bing and said, Perhaps you are wondering why I took the initiative to tell you what I know. It was actually very simple. I need your help. Nian Bing said, Go ahead. I think I understand what you mean. Yu Yu sat up on the bed. He looked straight at Nian Bing and said, The lost continent has returned. After the incantation ended, the seal was gently released. Right now, I was also wondering why the continent of gods had used so much energy to send it away. How could it return just by unlocking a seal? But now I know, because after the incantation ended, I wasn't really in a coma. Instead, I received information from a lost continent. I don't know where the information came from, but I saw the changes of the lost continent in the past 10,000 years, as well as the scene when it left our world 10,000 years ago. Everyone's attention was focused. No one disturbed Yu Yu. Silence as they listened to her. 10,000 years ago. I don't know where the continent of gods gathered such a huge amount of energy. They actually opened the door of time and forcibly removed the entire lost continent from our world. However, the amount of energy required to transfer a large continent was too large. Therefore, the people of the godly mainland could only seal the gate of time the moment the lost continent was sent away, allowing the lost continent to stay in another world. However, it kept pacing back and forth outside the gate of time, pacing back and forth outside the seal. After all, it belongs to our world. There has always been a connection between our world, and it is like a tough rope that has been pulling the lost continent. It is only because of the obstruction of the seal that it can't be pulled back. And Miorda's bottle of sealing is the key to opening this seal. Maybe you don't believe it, but the current me doesn't have a trace of blood in my body. All of my blood essence is needed to open Mortis's bottle of sealing. Nian Bing said in surprise, Is it the red light ball that condensed in front of you? Yu Yu nodded and said, That's right, it is that light ball. However, I didn't die. My blood became a sacrifice, but my body received the energy that returned when the seal was broken. Now, the energy is my blood. It can be said that in that incantation, I went through a process of rebirth. After the seal was finally opened, there was nothing that could stop the lost continent from returning. Therefore, it came back. Under the invisible guidance, it returned to our world. In the past, I heard Evil Moon talk about the Great War of the Gods. If you're worried that the lost continent will be able to resist the continent of gods, but it will also bring trouble to the Yangon continent, then you are all wrong. Nian Bing asked anxiously, why? Could it be that the lost continent? Yu said, that's right. The current lost continent is no longer the lost continent of the past. 10,000 years ago, the lost continent was a beautiful place. At that time, there were all kinds of strange creatures growing on the lost continent. Even the current Yangon continent can't change that scene. However, the Great War of the Gods destroyed the ecological balance of the lost continent. When the lost continent was sent to another world, it lost its support in our world. The remaining plants withered, the rivers dried up, and everything went from good to ugly. When I finished the incantation, images kept flashing in front of my eyes. I can confirm that it was everything that happened in the lost continent in the past 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, the changes of the lost continent were shocking. The originally prosperous continent had become abnormally barren. Even a drop of water could become a treasure on the lost continent. After 10,000 years, the population of the lost continent not only didn't increase, but also kept decreasing. Only the strongest races and humans were able to survive. In the past 10,000 years, not only did the lost continent not develop into a power that could compete with the godly mainland, but it was also constantly declining. Their civilization was also gradually disappearing. Now, there wasn't even a single city on the lost continent. Only the last water source had a few creatures living there. Now that they have returned, the harsh environment has changed. However, I don't know how long it will take for them to recover their vitality. Silence. The room fell into silence. Nian Bing's brain was working quickly. Through the heavens, acupuncture point. He knew that everything Yu said was from the bottom of her heart. There were no lies. He had thought of many situations after returning from the lost continent. He had also thought that it might decline, but from information he got from Yu, the lost continent was not as simple as declining. In a short period of time, when the last water source disappeared, the lost continent would be destroyed. Perhaps the lost continent would become a dead continent. Taking a deep breath, Nian Bing forced himself to calm down. He looked at Yu and said, so, you hope that we can help the lost continent. Is that so? Yu smiled. Her smile was a little sad. Evil Moon tried so hard to become the master of the lost continent. I'm afraid that he never thought that the lost continent would only have a few tens of thousands of refugees left. Even survival would be a problem. Ridiculous. Really ridiculous. Nian Bing sighed and said, your father isn't the only one who is laughable. Didn't we also think that the return of the lost continent would bring a period of peace to the Yangon continent? Didn't we also think that the return of the lost continent would bring peace to the Yangon continent? However, the place we return to is the bridge between the God's continent and the Yangon continent. Even ordinary God's continent could easily come to the Yangon continent. If I'm not wrong, you, who gave up all your essence blood for the return of the lost continent, have now become the true master of the lost continent. Yu laughed self-deprecatingly. Yes, you are very smart. When the images were over, I heard a voice. The voice said, welcome, our goddess. God, I hate this word, but I became the goddess of those tens of thousands of refugees. The last image was of my figure turning into an illusion and appearing in front of the remaining races of the lost continent. I saw their eyes filled with hope and saw their pious eyes. Can you tell me, what should I do now? In this kind of situation, what need do I have to hide? Nian Bing smiled bitterly. Now, I also want to know what to do. However, the only thing I can think of now is that we need to think of a way to deal with the God's continent's revenge. Garamandes said, Nian Bing, you don't have to worry too much. Although the God's continent is very wary of the lost continent, they have always been very cautious. Now that the lost continent has returned, If they are not fully prepared, they will not act rashly. Although our strength is not enough to contend against them, but with us dragons and you, we will not be destroyed so easily. Moreover, according to Yu, only those who can adapt to the environment will be able to survive. Who knows, there might be some who are stronger than us. In the worst case, we still have the Rangoon continent as our backing. There are 4 great empires in the Rangoon continent. With tens of millions of people, there are large amounts of resources that can be used. As long as they are properly distributed, they will definitely be a threat to the God's continent. The number of God's continent is less than 10,000, and the true experts are less than 100. This time, they have lost a master god, and more than 10 god and half-god experts. It can be said that their losses are disastrous. Nian Bing sighed. Right now, we can only take one step at a time. I hope that the God's continent can prepare for a period of time, so that we can have time to prepare for their arrival. Miss Yu, you should know where the refugees of the Lost Continent are, right? You should rest for a few more days. When your body has fully recovered, we will set off. Yu said somewhat helplessly, there is no need to rest. I am fine now and can set off at any time. In the past, I never thought that I could do anything. I just wanted to live together with Brother Heping Chow. But now, when I think of the hope in the eyes of the Lost Continent's people, I feel that I have a lot of responsibilities. Thank you for being willing to help me. Nian Bing smiled and said, there's nothing to thank me for. We're just trying to protect the Yangon continent. The Lost Continent is the springboard from the God's continent to the Rangoon continent. Once the God's continent discovers the true situation of the Lost Continent, after the refugees of the Lost Continent are killed, the next target will be the Rangoon continent. So, we're just protecting ourselves. Nian Bing said, no, it is better for you to rest for a few more days. I think that although the essence blood in your body has turned into energy, it does not mean that you are an energy body. The energy in your body is very strange. It is complementing your original darkness energy, maintaining your life. Just now, I use my life energy to stimulate your body's functions. I think that in a few days, your essence blood will recover. At that time, as long as you carefully understand your own energy, your strength will definitely increase by a large level. For us, with every bit of strength increase, we will have more confidence in fighting against the God's continent. Moreover, I need to deal with some things in these few days. Since the Lost Continent has returned, I think that many people will be interested in that place. Yu was stunned for a moment. She saw the light of wisdom in Nian Bing's eyes. Nian Bing thought very far. At that time, the Dragon God had told him that the Lost Continent was even larger than the Rangoon continent. Although the Lost Continent was no longer the Lost Continent of the past, it was because it lacked all kinds of things to survive in the different space. But now that it had returned, it was an opportunity for the 4 great empires of the Rangoon continent. With this opportunity, as long as it was used well, the 4 great empires could help them deal with the God's continent. After all, they also had the responsibility to protect the Rangoon continent. After leaving Yu's room, Nian Bing returned to his room. He asked for a pen and paper and immediately wrote 3 letters. After writing the letters, he had Yin Ti send someone to send them out. The 3 letters were to Prince Rong of the Huarong Empire, Luo Ro of the Ottoman Empire, and Mu Jing of the Longmu Empire. When he finished writing the letters, Lan Chun had also returned. How is it? Chen Chun, are there any signs of the Tian Shaking Mountain Range? Nian Bing asked. Lan Chun said, 2 days ago, Marshal Snow Soul sent a letter back saying that there was a huge earthquake in the Tian Shaking Mountain Range. Many mountains have collapsed. Fortunately, they were stationed at the edge, so they weren't affected. When the letter was sent, the earthquake was still going on. Nian Bing nodded and said, the return of the Lost Continent will have a huge impact on our world. I will go see Yin Feng now. It's time to talk to him. Although the Frozen Moon Empire and All-In Empire are the weakest among the 4 empires, they're the closest to the Tian Shaking Mountain Range. Moreover, they have formed an alliance with the Longmu Empire. If we can do something before the people of the Huarong Empire arrive, I think it will be very beneficial for the distribution of the Lost Continent in the future. After all, The Huarong Empire is too far away from the Lost Continent. Lan Chen's heart moved and said, "Just now, I heard about the situation of the Lost Continent from Sister Bing. You mean you want the 4 empires of the Rangoon continent to occupy the Lost Continent?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "The Lost Continent is lacking a lot of things. Like a wasteland, what it needs the most is to reclaim it. Such a vast land will attract the attention of the 4 empires sooner or later. According to Yu, there are only a few tens of thousands of people in the Lost Continent. Since it's like this, why can't the 4 empires divide such a large land? It seems like the 4 empires are really going to develop in a balanced direction this time. Now, only by using this point can the 4 empires send their troops to the Lost Continent. What the Lost Continent lacks the most now is water. However, once it returns, it will be like the Rangoon continent, with at least 3 sides facing the sea. I think, as the rain increases, if we can gather some water and ice magicians, we can create artificial lakes. Near the coast, using the water element, we should be able to create some artificial lakes. This way, it won't be difficult for the Lost Continent to gradually develop." Lan Shan said with some doubt, "Nian Bing, the most important thing for us now should be to deal with those gods. The development of the Lost Continent is not something we should care about." Nian Bing smiled and said, "The Lost Continent is very important." He said, "To the 4 countries, the Lost Continent is extremely important. If the Lost Continent is not suitable for survival, then their influence will be reduced. When the gods of God's great land attack, we are the only ones who can face them. However, if the 4 empires find out that the Lost Continent is a very fertile land, with the size of the Lost Continent, what do you think they will do? I think they will definitely send a lot of troops. They will try to occupy a part of it and reclaim it. Now, although we don't know the situation of the Lost Continent, but such a large piece of land, I don't believe that the 4 empires will not be tempted. Although the gods are powerful, but there are only about 100 of them. The rest, their strength is mostly at the 11th level or even lower. If we can gather all the elite forces in the Rangoon continent, we may be able to fight against them. Therefore, what we need to do now is very simple. That is to arouse the ambitions of the 4 empires and then use them cleverly." Lan Shan suddenly said, "I understand what you mean. There shouldn't be a problem for you to use the Ice Moon Empire. When Yin Feng mentions you, he definitely admires you. Moreover, now that Mother controls the Ice God Tower, the entire Ice Moon Empire could be said to be under your control. As for the other 3 empires, they have some connections. If you want to make good use of the 4 empires, you are the key." Nian Bing smiled and said, "Your analysis is very correct. Now I am the key. To me, the most important thing is to make good use of it. All right, you go and rest for a while. You must be tired from taking care of me these days. I will go and discuss with Yin Feng. After all, the Ice Moon Empire is our foundation. This time, we have to let the Ice Moon Empire get some benefits." In his heart, he already had a plan. Of the 4 empires, the one he didn't need to worry about the most was the Huarong Empire. The Huarong Empire was already powerful enough, far surpassing the other 3 empires. The Ice Moon Empire and Allan Empire were relatively weaker. However, the heaven-shaking mountain range was within the Ottoman Empire. As long as they cooperated well and quickly occupied the other side of the heaven-shaking mountain range, the development of the 2 empires would be much better in the future. As for what the Longmu Empire would get, it would depend on Mu Jing's influence on the Longmu Empire, as well as how much importance the Longmu Empire placed on the Lost Continent. 3 days later, Nian Bing brought a total of 30,000 people and stepped onto the road to the heaven-shaking mountain range. Of the 30,000 people, other than the 600 elites from the Bloodline sect and experts like Nian Bing, the rest were all talents that Nian Bing and Yin Feng had discussed. Among them, there were the 100 ice magicians that Nian Bing had brought from the Ice God Tower and the 500 magicians that were personally led by Long Ling's father, the Ice Moon Empire's Magician Guild President Long Ji. The rest were people who didn't have any battle strength. 30,000 people, a total of 30 carriages of resources, majestically headed towards the heaven-shaking mountain range. The Ice Moon Empire didn't need to send any more troops. The elites that Marshal Schweppe had brought were more than enough to handle everything. The Ice Moon Empire's biggest advantage was that it was far away from the Huarong Empire. The two neighboring empires were allies, so they didn't need to worry about defense. This time, Wang Feng made up his mind and cooperated with Yin Bing completely. These 3,000 carriages of resources were only the first batch. When Yin Bing left, Yin Feng had already mobilized the entire nation to gather as many resources and talents as possible without affecting the production of the nation. When Yin Bing told Yin Feng about the situation of the Lost Continent in detail, Yin Feng had a premonition that whether he would become the wisest ruler in the history of the Ice Moon Empire would depend on this. And it was because of Yin Bing's help, and because he was the highest decision-maker in the Ice Moon Empire, that the Ice Moon Empire had the possibility of gaining the upper hand. When he was discussing with the ministers, the plan that he and Yin Bing came up with was unanimously approved. Therefore, the entire nation didn't meet with any resistance and was in full swing. Even Yin Bing didn't think that Yin Feng would give her unreserved support. This time, she was even more confident. When Yin Bing led her people to leave Ice Moon City and head towards the heaven-shaking mountain range, the 3 letters that she sent out caused huge waves in the other 3 empires. Among them, the Ottoman Empire reacted the fastest. With the development of the Ottoman Empire in the past few years, Luo Ro's influence in the Ottoman Empire grew day by day. The king of the Ottoman Empire saw that his country was growing stronger day by day, and his trust in Luo Ro deepened. Moreover, Luo Ro had the support of the Ottoman Empire's #1 military officer, Lan Xun, and Fengnu's father, Duke Lan Yu. After a few days of careful consideration, the Ottoman Empire also made their own choice. Other than the 50,000 elites that were sent to the heaven-shaking mountain range, the entire nation's army was mobilized and stationed at the border between the Huarong Empire and the Qilu Empire. Luo Ro followed the instructions of the Lord of Faith and gathered a large amount of resources in the shortest time possible, and headed towards the heaven-shaking mountain range. Although the heaven-shaking mountain range was in the Ottoman Empire's territory, the distance from Ice Moon Empire's Ice Moon City to the heaven-shaking mountain range, it was about the same distance as the Ottoman Empire to the heaven-shaking mountain range. When Luo Ro set off with her people, Yin Bing led the elites of the Ice Moon Empire and left for more than half a month ago. At this time, the Longmu Empire and the Huarong Empire were still in an intense debate. Mu Jing's position in the Longmu Empire was very high. This was because of the Gaia goddess domain. She was the target of many forces. At the same time, she was deeply trusted by the Longmu Empire's king. Unfortunately, she was only a girl after all. When she reported this matter to the Longmu Empire's king, it immediately caused a huge wave in the country. Those who supported Mu Jing were the faction led by her brother, Mu Rong. Those who opposed it, those who supported it were the conservative faction of the Longmu Empire. Their reason for opposing it was very simple. It was just a letter, and no one knew whether the Lost Continent really existed. They all suggested sending people to the Lost Continent to investigate before coming back with a conclusion. After all, the Longmu Empire was now in an alliance with the Ottoman Empire, so it was not difficult to send people over. However, Mu Jing's opinion was very strong. She hoped that the Longmu Empire would immediately send a large number of troops and resources to the Lost Continent to explore. She firmly believed that Yin Bing would not do something without thinking. Since the Lost Continent existed, then the opportunity could not be missed. She naturally understood the principle of first come, first serve. Unfortunately, the king still stood on the conservative side. He felt that there was a threat from the Huarong Empire in the south. Although they had signed a peace treaty, they still had to be on guard. Therefore, it was better to send people to investigate first. A month later, the Longmu Empire received 2 pieces of news at the same time. One was from the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire's army was already stationed at the border with the Huarong Empire, and they requested the Longmu Empire to provide support with resources. The other was from the scouts. Although the scouts did not really reach the Lost Continent, they found a large number of troops and vehicles transporting resources at the Tiandang mountain range. They were all from the Ice Moon Empire and the Ottoman Empire. Only at this time did the Longmu Empire's king feel that something was wrong. After discussing with Mu Jing, he decided to send troops over as well. Before this, not only did he mobilize his own troops to guard the Tiandang mountain range, he also sent a large number of resources to the Ottoman Empire. After all, in order to defend this long and narrow battle line, they needed the cooperation of the Ottoman Empire. Naturally, the Ottoman Empire would not stop the Longmu Empire's actions. Just a large number of resources made it so that they had no reason to stop the Longmu Empire from going through their own territory to the Tiandang mountain range. However, when the Longmu Empire's army moved out, even Luo Ro had already been in the Tiandang mountain range for a month. The Ice Moon Empire's third batch of resources had already passed through the Tiandang mountain range. The Huarong Empire was originally very far away from the Ice Moon Empire, so it was naturally the last to receive the news. Prince Rong's position in the Huarong Empire was naturally not something that Mu Jing could compare to. He also firmly believed in his grandson's words. However, the Huarong Empire was faced with a problem of its own. When they received the news, after a discussion between Prince Rong, Prime Minister Su Yu, and Emperor Hua Tian, it was confirmed that the Huarong Empire would also want a share of the Lost Continent. The Ottoman Empire's army had already arrived at the border. It was obvious that they wanted to prevent the Huarong Empire from going to the Lost Continent. The Longmu Empire's army also arrived very quickly. Because of the Qilu Empire, although the Huarong Empire was confident in their strength, it was not easy for them to charge through the blockade of the two empires. Moreover, the peace treaty had just been signed, so they naturally did not want to take the risk of provoking the three empires. After careful discussion, the Huarong Empire decided to take another route, which was the sea route. Although it was impossible to reach the Lost Continent from the Yangon continent, it was possible to reach the Lost Continent through the sea. Within 2 months, the Huarong Empire and the former Qilu Empire's ships brought their most elite troops and large amounts of supplies to be the last to reach the Lost Continent. Although Nian Bing's 3 letters played a key role, before his letters arrived, the slight earthquake that occurred throughout the Yangon continent became the basis of the 3 empires' trust. In a short period of time, all 4 empires of the Yangon continent mobilized and set off towards the Lost Continent. They brought not only troops, but also large amounts of supplies and various types of craftsmen. Nian Bing and the others had already been on the Lost Continent for 3 months. Originally, transporting resources from the steep mountain range was a very difficult task, but Nian Bing and the others were not ordinary people. Under the influence of the earthquake, many parts of the Tiandang mountain range had already collapsed. Nian Bing, Feng Nu, Lan Shun, Halogen, and the 7 Dragon Kings worked together. In just 2 days, they used the collapsed parts of the Tiandang mountain range to open up a flat road. Although it was only a few dozen feet wide, it was enough for the troops to pass through. When they first arrived at the Lost Continent, they were immediately stunned by the scene in front of them. Just as Yu had said, the Lost Continent was a desolate land. As far as the eye could see, there was not even a single plant to be seen. The place where the Lost Continent and the Yangon continent met was the Tiandang mountain range. On both sides of the Tiandang mountain range, one could see a vast ocean. After arriving at the Lost Continent, Nian Bing ordered all 600 magicians to stay on a plain by the sea to construct a man-made lake. Halogen's forging skills were at the master level, and his destructive power was also at the master level. For ordinary people, opening up a lake was an extremely difficult task, but for him, using the god-slaying axe as a foundation, it only took him a few attacks. This was also under his purposeful control. In just a few days, a huge crater appeared under his tyrannical strength. At this time, water and ice magicians became the key. Chapter 227. The mages of the Ice God Tower were led by Lan Shun, and Long Ling helped her father. After a month, they used the abundant water elements near the ocean to cultivate a huge freshwater lake on the Lost Continent. The craftsmen brought by the Ice Moon Empire were also busy. They used all kinds of materials and relied on this man-made, lake named Ice Moon Lake to build the first city on the lost continent 10,000 years later. At the same time, under the protection of the garrison, they began to sow seeds beside the lake, planting all kinds of suitable crops beside the lake. Although the lost continent was desolate, after exploration, the soil here was very fertile, very suitable for the growth of crops. The army now became workers. They cultivated rivers from the side of the lake and extended them to the surroundings. The magicians also continuously used the water element to bring down torrential rain, nourishing the land. After 3 months of continuous effort, the surroundings of the Ice Moon Lake began to show signs of prosperity. Among them, the most important was Nianbing. She injected her own life force into the lake. Although she couldn't make all the plants grow instantly like cow, under the nourishment of the lake water, all the crops grew quickly. The Ice Moon Lake was already a scene of emerald green. When the Ottoman Empire and the Longmu Empire's army arrived, the Ice Moon Lake had already taken shape. Luo Ro fully displayed her wisdom. The Ice Moon Empire occupied a piece of land in the northwest, while she occupied another piece of land in the southeast. After passing through the Tiandang mountain range, she occupied the 2 pieces of land closest to the Yangon continent. However, the Ottoman Empire had much fewer magicians than the Ice Moon Empire. Therefore, although the artificial lake was also under construction, it still needed a period of time to take shape. However, in terms of allocation of resources, Nianbing couldn't compare to Luo Ro. The Ottoman Empire didn't send any troops here, but the combination of various talents made the construction faster. When Mu Jing arrived with the Longmu Empire's army, they had no choice but to extend inland. At this time, she naturally didn't want to offend Nianbing and Luo Ro. After discussing with Nianbing, she built the Longmu Empire's temporary base not far from the Frozen Moon Lake. She drew a river from the Frozen Moon Lake to provide fresh water. Of course, the benefits were not for free. The nature mages that Mu Jing brought along also had to help the Ice Moon Empire grow all kinds of crops. After all, when it came to farming, even the Huarong Empire could not compare to the Longmu Empire. 3 months had passed, and the 3 empires were all busy. Nianbing wasn't idle either. Using the allocation of resources and his own continuous efforts, all 200 god-exterminating crossbows were now equipped with 20 god-exterminating arrows. Under his orders, the elites of the Bloodlion sect also arrived one after another. Even the Bloodlion 7 elders personally came to the Lost Continent. A total of 2,000 people became Nianbing's most powerful helpers. The arrival of the Bloodlion 7 elders also told Nianbing that the Huarong Empire had entered the Lost Continent through the water. Nianbing wasn't surprised. If the Huarong Empire didn't do anything, it would be abnormal. When he first arrived at the Lost Continent, Nianbing wanted to immediately go find the survivors of the Lost Continent with Yu Yu. However, he realized the problem later on, so he gave up on his idea and stayed in the Lost Continent to develop. It was close to the Yangon continent, and the biggest advantage was that resources could be continuously transported. The mages and the army worked together to continuously extend the Frozen Moon Lake inland. Through the rivers and the terrain, they built many lakes inland. In addition to the planting of crops, they developed rapidly. The construction of the Moon Lake City by the Frozen Moon Lake was also on track. The rocks could be obtained locally, and the craftsmen were the best. In about half a year, the city would be completed. After completing all these, just as Nianbing was preparing for the next step, he welcomed a group of uninvited guests. Early in the morning, the warm sun shone on the earth. The blue water of the Frozen Moon Lake sparkled under the gentle breeze, and a faint mist filled the air above the lake. The emerald green color of the lakeside was full of vitality. Under the nourishment of nature magic and the water that was full of life, the plants grew at an extremely fast rate. What the people of the 3 empires needed were the seeds of plants. After planting them, they would show a scene of thriving prosperity. Yu stood by the lake, looking at the clear lake water. The sadness in her heart had faded a lot compared to 3 months ago. She now had a wish, and that was to fill the lost continent with greenery. When a person had a goal, Her life would no longer be monotonous. Ping Chao stood by Yu Yu's side, looking at the girl with a smile on her face. A warm current flowed through his heart. The happy Yu Yu had returned. That's right. This place was so beautiful. At this time, Yu Yu's expression suddenly changed. She looked into the distance, and a large cloud of dust rose from the distance. The shape of the dust did not disperse. Ping Chao and Yu Yu's expression changed at the same time. They both thought of the same question. Could it be that the gods had come? Nian Bing walked out of the tent she was staying in. The army that had just started to get busy in the morning also stopped what they were doing and quickly got into formation. Under the leadership of Marshal Snow Soul and Mu Jing, they got into formation by the frozen moon lake. From afar, they could already see that in front of the large cloud of dust, there was a fiery red army. They were all cavalry. Seeing this army, Yu Yu, who was already floating in the air, heaved a sigh of relief. After all, they were all humans and not the gods. Just like what Nian Bing had said before, after the process of unsealing, Yu Yu's strength had greatly increased. Her control of darkness had also reached a new level. Looking at this army, although they were orderly, they were riding horses. From the aura they were emitting and the horses they were riding, it was obvious that they were not from the godly continent. At this time, Snow Soul and Mu Jing's expression turned ugly. This was because they recognized that this cloud of cavalry was the Order of the Flaming Lion, which was once known as the #1 cavalry group in the Lost Continent. The Huarong Empire still came. From the looks of it, they seemed to be ready to attack at any time. When the Flaming Lionite Regiment arrived at a distance of 5 li away from the Frozen Moon Empire and Longmu Empire's army, they stopped. The Flaming Lionite Regiment instantly scattered to both sides as if they were split by a giant blade. Along with the trembling of the earth, an enormous earth dragon appeared. The true #1 Knight Regiment of the continent, the Flaming Demon Dragon, lofty appeared behind the Flaming Lion Knight Regiment. The person in the lead was sitting on the back of a giant earth dragon. His magic robe was flashing with red light and had a golden lion embroidered on it. This represented his identity. He was the leader of the Huarong Empire's army, Prince Rong Yen, who was as famous as the Ice Goddess Priest. Snow Soul sat on his own horse. Although it was his first time seeing the 2 famous cavalry groups on the continent, he was deeply impressed by the scene in front of him. He had been in the military all his life. When he saw such a powerful cavalry group, other than being surprised, he was also envious. He wished that he could have such a powerful cavalry group under his command. This time, the Ice Moon Empire sent 50,000 soldiers. The Ottoman Empire's army didn't follow them. Instead, they were stationed at the sky-shaking mountain range. They were responsible for helping the troops of the 3 empires pass through the sky-shaking mountain range. The Longmu Empire also sent 50,000 soldiers. However, in order to reclaim the land and save resources, they only sent infantrymen. There were only a few cavalrymen. Although there were 100,000 soldiers, Snow Soul couldn't do anything to the 2 cavalry groups from the Huarong Empire. The thousands of Order of the Flaming Dragon only needed 1 charge to shatter his defensive line. At this moment, 7 resonant dragon roars sounded from behind. The Snow Soul was stunned and couldn't help but look back. What he saw were 7 rays of light that were growing bigger and bigger. Blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black. The 7 rays of light were constantly changing and expanding. When they appeared in midair, their gigantic dragon forms were revealed. Dragons. They were the legendary dragons. Moreover, there were 7 of them. The dragon roars grew louder and louder. The earth dragons of the fiery Demon Dragon Knight Regiment that were brimming with killing intent a moment ago all revealed looks of fear in their huge dragon eyes. One by one, they retreated uncontrollably. All the war horses present, no matter which side they belonged to, were all paralyzed on the ground. Their bodies were trembling nonstop. How could ordinary creatures offend a dragon's dignity? A silver light appeared in midair. After the silver light flashed, a figure appeared out of thin air. Gray spots of light condensed below him. Another dragon appeared. Although this dragon was smaller in size, It emitted a strange golden-gray glow. It was Nian Bing and Oscar. Nian Bing sat on Oscar's back and said calmly, "Greetings, Prince Rong. May I know what brings you here?" Prince Rong looked at the 8 dragons in the sky. His expression couldn't help but change. Those were real dragons. Moreover, there were 8 of them. Although his knights were the most powerful in the Yangon continent, they had no advantage in front of giant dragons. Looking at his grandson riding on the dragon's back, Prince Rong couldn't help but feel a little amused. "It was clearly you who asked me to bring people to the lost continent to cultivate, but now you're asking me?" He pondered for a moment and said, "We're not here to start a war. The peace talks between the 4 countries have established our previous relationship. Our country came to this continent through the water. However, because of the lack of water mages, we lack water. I wonder if you can give us some water." "Don't worry, the Huarong Empire will only develop on the other side. We won't affect you." It turned out that after Prince Rong brought people to the lost continent, he immediately began to develop. However, he soon discovered that water was the most important factor that limited them. The Huarong Empire definitely had the most mages among the 4 empires. However, they didn't have many water mages. The current water mages were all from the original Qilu Empire. Not to mention building a lake. Even drinking water for the army and craftsmen had become a problem. After all, they didn't have someone like Nian Bing, Lan Shun, or Long Ling who could absorb the Xiantian Qi formed by the water element and create large amounts of rain. Nian Bing floated down from the dragon's back and said with a smile, "That's easy. After all, we're all from the Yangon continent. The lost continent is so vast. As for the problem of water, I think we'll be responsible for opening up a large river about 30 feet wide. We'll be responsible for maintaining the water supply." Prince Rong smiled and said, "You brat, you're getting more and more capable. It seems that my vision was very accurate." Nian Bing also smiled and said, "Prince Rong, I'm now representing the Ice Moon Empire." As he said that, he winked at his grandfather. Prince Rong was surprised and said, "You mean there are conditions for the water supply?" Nian Bing chuckled and said, "Naturally, there are some conditions. The Huarong Empire is at the southern end of the Yangon continent. There are many crops that we don't have. Moreover, the lost continent's climate is mild. Therefore, I hope that we can share resources with the Huarong Empire. We'll provide the water, and you'll provide the resources we need. How about it?" Prince Rong glared at Nian Bing and said, "You brat, aren't you taking advantage of the situation to extort us?" Nian Bing smiled and said, "Water is the source of life. In the lost continent's current situation, water is the most important thing. I think, Prince Rong, you won't be stingy, right?" Prince Rong looked at the giant dragons in the sky. Even without his grandson, these dragons were not something his army could deal with, let alone snatching the water supply. He nodded and said, "All right, we'll do as you say. However, you need to open up this river as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for our side." In front of his grandson, he did not need to hide anything. Nian Bing smiled and suddenly shouted, "Brother Halogen." A black figure jumped up from behind the Ice Moon Empire's army. The black light expanded in an instant, as if splitting the heavens and earth. With a loud bang, a fissure continuously extended into the distance. In the blink of an eye, it had crossed 5 miles and arrived in front of the Huarong Empire's army. The fissure was about 10 feet deep and 30 feet wide. Just as Nian Bing had said, the only thing missing was water. "War God! War God! War God!" The Ice Moon Empire's army shouted in unison. When Halogen completed the Ice Moon Lake in a few days, he already had the title of War God. Now, with the Ice Moon Lake as the center, more than 2/3 of the rivers that extended out were his work. Prince Rong watched as Halogen floated to Nian Bing's side. He nodded and said, "All right, if you need any resources, just let me know." Nian Bing said, "Grandfather, Brother Halogen, and I will go with you to the Huarong Empire's base. First, we need to determine the direction. Second, I have some things to discuss with you." Prince Rong nodded and said, "I know what you want to say. Come with me. It's time for us grandfather and grandson to have a good talk." When Nian Bing led the Ice Moon Empire's army into the Lost Continent, the Godly Continent, In a cave, 6 people sat in a circle. At first glance, they looked no different from ordinary people. One of them had a pale face and only one arm left. It was the goddess of misfortune, Xiaoyu. The lost continent has returned. This is something we can't tolerate. An old man who looked to be in his 50s said calmly. He wore a yellow robe. Although his face was calm, there was a hint of anger in his eyes. I didn't expect there to be so many strong people in the Yangon continent. It seems that our situation is not good. Brother Xiaoyu, how are your injuries? On the way back, did you see the situation of the lost continent? Xiaoyu shook her head and said, I used the teleportation circle that was set up before to return. I can only be sure that the lost continent has returned. However, I don't know the situation there. The old man said, 2 overgods and 13 divine experts. In the end, you were the only one who returned. That human, is he really as scary as you described? Xiaoyu's eyes showed a hint of fear. Yes, the human's spiritual energy is so strong that we can't imagine it. In just one exchange, Gulong was killed by his spiritual energy. If I didn't run fast enough, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have been able to bring back this news. Master Shijie, you should plan early. The old man Shijie thought for a while and said, There's nothing to plan now. The lost continent has returned. They won't forget the hatred from 10,000 years ago. We have been dormant on this continent for so long. It's time to leave. Xiaoyu said anxiously, but, Master Shijie, those humans are indeed very strong. However, we don't know the situation of the lost continent. Although there are many strong people among us gods in the past 10,000 years. However, according to the situation 10,000 years ago, as long as the lost continent continues to develop, I'm afraid. Shijie raised his hand to stop Xiaoyu from continuing. He said indifferently, Don't forget that we still have the support of the true gods. If the true gods can seal the lost continent once, they can do it a second time. Last time, the true gods issued a decree. After ordering us to deal with the white people in the Yangon continent, they entered a deep sleep to cultivate. We can stay put for the time being. However, we have to mobilize all the gods in the godly mainland. Wait for the support of the 3 true gods and the ordinary humans. The outcome will not change. Among the 8 overgods, the dragon god is not on our side. There's no need to inform him. The few of you lead our gods and guard the border between the lost continent and the godly mainland. As long as we can guard our territory before the true gods wake up, it will be enough. At the same time, send people to the interior of the lost continent to investigate. Observe the situation there. This time, you must be careful. Don't blame me for being merciless if you make a mistake again. 3 golden lights lit up from Shijie's hands and chest respectively. The enormous pressure made the other overgods present lower their heads. Originally, there was no distinction between the overgods. However, when Shijie reached his current level, he became the leader of the overgods. He was also the earth god of all the gods. Xiaoyu, your Earth Emperor Extreme Acupoint has exploded. You can no longer be one of the overgods. From now on, you will be demoted to an ordinary god. You have disappointed me this time. If you had tried your best to destroy the process of unsealing in the beginning, there wouldn't be such a situation. Tell me, how should I deal with you? Xiaoyu's body trembled as she knelt on the ground. Master Shijie, please give me another chance on account that we were once overgods. Shijie snorted. Give you another chance? What about your dignity as a god? Looking at the trembling Xiaoyu, his tone softened. Now is the time to use people. I will remember your sins for now. If you make any more mistakes, I will let you know what it feels like to live a life worse than death. After settling the matters between the 4 great empires, Nian Bing brought Feng Nu, Kitty, the 7 dragon kings, Yu Yu, and Ping Chao to the interior of the lost continent. Halogen, Lan Shun, and Long Ling stayed at Frozen Moon Lake to assist the 4 great empires in reclaiming the lost continent. Originally, Halogen wanted to go with them. However, no one could replace his role in opening up the river. Therefore, he stayed behind in the end. Ling Yanbing was gratified that although the lost continent was covered in yellow soil, it had not turned into a desert. If it had turned into a desert, even the strongest magician would not be able to change it. After a few months of hard work, the reclamation had begun to show results. The first batch of crops had been successfully harvested and could be eaten. Now, Nianbing could only hope that it was like what Garamandes had said. The attack from the godly continent would not come so soon. They were led by Yu Yu. Their target was the remaining survivors of the lost continent. Along the way, they saw many unique sights of the lost continent. There was a large piece of wasteland without any plants, barren mountains, and some dilapidated ruins that could not be recognized. They had also tried to find some things left behind by the lost continent. However, they were quickly disappointed. After 10,000 years, all the ruins had been weathered to the point that they could not recognize them. Not to mention documents like paper, even the sturdy rocks had become broken stones. They had been flying in the air for almost 3 days now. They had already entered the depths of the lost continent. Every time they came across a plane, Nianbing would scatter a large number of seeds from his space ring. Now that the rain on the lost continent had gradually become plentiful, these seeds would germinate one day. With every bit of green, the lost continent would have a bit more vitality. Stop for a moment. Yu, who was sitting on the back of the Dark Dragon King, Kateriosis, suddenly said. Kateriosis spread open his dragon wings and controlled his huge body to float in the air. Yu clasped her hands together, revealing her index fingers. A little black light appeared on the tip of her index finger. The faint black light gradually became stronger. A blood-red symbol lit up on her forehead, and a strange spiritual wave drifted to the surroundings. Nianbing flew to Yu Yu's side and felt her spiritual wave, waiting for her to wake up from her judgment. In these 3 days, every once in a while, Yu would stop to search for the location in her memory. After a while, the black light and the blood-red light disappeared at the same time. Yu opened her eyes and said, "We're almost there. I can already feel their aura." Nianbing's spirit was aroused and said, "Then let's go quickly and see them earlier. Perhaps we can find out some of the current situation of the lost continent from a people." Although Yu saw many scenes of the lost continent after the seal was completed, it was still just a blurry image. Everyone sped up and flew. Nianbing concentrated his spiritual power. He probed in the direction Yu pointed. Since the last time he exploded his acupuncture point, his spiritual power finally recovered, and under the influence of the extreme Emperor acupuncture point, it became more domineering than before. At this time, when his spiritual power probed in a direction, the general signs and energy waves in that direction would be collected by the Heaven's Eye acupuncture point. The ultimate Heaven's Eye acupuncture point matched with the ultimate Earth extreme Emperor acupuncture point. The power was strong. Perhaps even Cao didn't think of it at that time. Feng Nu suddenly noticed that Nianbing's expression changed. She couldn't help but retract her sparkling red wings. She came to his side and asked, "What's wrong? Did you find anything?" Nianbing's eyes flashed coldly. "Quick, let's go quickly. I'm afraid there's a change there." Saying that, his body suddenly accelerated in the air. The 7-colored celestial eye field instantly erupted, enveloping everyone, including the 7 Dragon Kings. With the full support of the celestial eye acupoint, everyone's flying speed suddenly increased, turning into streams of light as they flew into the distance. While flying, Garamandes curiously asked, "Nianbing, what did you feel?" Nianbing's face became serious. It's the aura of a god. Everyone's heart tightened at the same time. The 7 Dragon Kings' flying speed increased by a large margin. Yu Yu's eyes flickered with black light. "I seem to have felt it too. They are angry and are resisting something." Nianbing asked Yu Yu, "Can you feel the specific location?" "I'm afraid it's too late. We have to go now." Yu Yu nodded. "I can try. Now that we're close, my senses are a lot clearer." Nianbing floated to the back of Kateriosis, pulled Yu Yu's little hand, and said, "Then let's try cooperating. Open your mind and transmit the location you feel to me." Yu Yu closed her eyes. A faint black stream of air condensed in front of her, and the blood-red symbol on her forehead lit up again. At this moment, she clearly felt a gentle energy entering her mind, trying to fuse with her will. Through this energy, all her senses in the surroundings seemed to become clear. That was a very pure spiritual power. Everyone in the surroundings only saw a ring of silver radiance emitting from Nian Bing's body. The radiance enveloped him and Yu Yu's body. A golden eye opened between Nian Bing's eyebrows. The faint golden radiance fused with the dark red radiance on Yu Yu's forehead. When the two radiances fused together, the silver radiance around Nian Bing's body instantly became stronger. With a flash of silver light, the two figures disappeared from the back of Dark Dragon King Cateriosis at the same time. Garamandes said in astonishment, "Damn, that's also possible. He can teleport long distances without positioning himself. No wonder Brother Halogen always said that Nian Bing is a monster. You're not allowed to speak ill of my big brother Nian Bing." Kitty glared at Garamandes with some dissatisfaction. Ever since she received the Space Dragon King Caudilus as a pet, her status imperceptibly rose a lot. At this moment, she was sitting on Caudilus' back, playing with Caudilus' beautiful silver scales. Garamandes laughed and said, "How am I speaking ill of him? I'm praising your big brother Nian Bing's ability." Caudilus finally found an opportunity to divert Kitty's attention from his pitiful dragon scales. So how could he let it go? He chuckled and said, "Kitty, I'm not someone who's looking for trouble, but if I were you, I wouldn't tolerate Garamandes talking about your big brother Nian Bing like that." Kitty giggled and said, "That's good. If you can't tolerate it, then you can do it. It has nothing to do with me. I can tolerate it. My tolerance has always been very good. Then I'll also tolerate it. Pretend I didn't say anything." A silver light flashed, and Nian Bing and Yu Yu appeared out of thin air. The moment they stepped on the ground, a green light flashed in front of Nian Bing's eyes, giving him a fright. He hurriedly released his Heaven's Eye domain, protecting Yu Yu within it. Only then did he have the time to observe everything in front of him. What he saw was a group of people in ragged clothes crazily rushing in one direction. In that direction, more than 10 people radiating Do-Chi light were madly slaughtering people. Every time they used Do-Chi attack, they would take away several to more than 10 lives. Those raggedly dressed people were of a mixed race, but their movements were extremely fast. Almost every leap would allow them to move about 10 meters forward. Most of them did not have weapons in their hands. They were like savages as they attacked the dozen or so people with their bare hands. As for the green light from before, it was shot out by a woman. She had a pair of transparent wings and was currently floating in the air. She had a short bow in her hand, and one green arrow after another was shot out. Only she could pose a threat to the dozen or so people. This woman's figure was a little shorter than ordinary humans. Her long emerald green hair fluttered behind her. Although the clothes on her body were severely damaged, revealing her snow-white skin, it couldn't hide her moving elegance. Ling Nianbing was surprised that this woman had a pair of pointed ears. She was obviously different from other humans. Among these ragged people, Nianbing saw dwarves similar to Halogen. These dwarves were very sturdy. Unfortunately, none of them had the strength of Halogen. "Gods, they are gods," Yu Yu angrily said. "That's right. Those people who were slaughtering the barbarians were gods. They looked like they were playing, constantly digging out Do-Chi, easily killing the barbarians in front of them. It didn't take them much effort at all. In front of them, there were already a few hundred corpses. Although they were surrounded by the barbarians, they didn't look nervous at all. They were actually laughing and chatting while killing the barbarians." Nianbing let out a long roar and extended his slender body. He had already floated up. Although he had only observed for a short while, he had already realized that these gods were on a completely different level compared to the ones he had encountered in the Yangon continent. They were obviously low-level divine servants or demigods. There wasn't even a single god-level expert. 7 rays of light shot out from Yin Bing's body at the same time. They were 7 divine sabers. Saber light flashed. In midair, 7 Yin Bings appeared at the same time. They were the 7 elemental shadow puppets. In just one flash, the 7 elemental shadow puppets had already arrived in front of the dozen over-gods. They blocked the savages who were charging forward. Chapter 228. The Level 11 Darkness Curse, Death God Scythe, accompanied by the Level 11 Fire Curse, Flame God Dragon's Roar, appeared at the same time. The explosion of the two level 11 curses forced the gods to retreat in an instant. One of the slower gods was instantly sliced apart by the death god's scythe, causing a rain of blood to splatter everywhere. The barbarians' gazes all turned towards Nianbing, and the faces of the gods instantly changed. At this moment, a black stream of air mixed with blood light floated out, enveloping the gods. Nianbing looked at the corpses. None of them were intact. Fresh blood dyed the ground red, and the miserable scene caused his killing intent to soar. The gods released their dou qi at the same time, but they did not fight the black stream of air head-on. Instead, they used all their strength to block the black cloud and turn to run. They knew that the opponent had an expert that they could not fight against. However, would Nianbing let them escape? No, of course not. A faint golden light enveloped the bodies of the gods like a barrier. As the light flickered, all of the gods felt a sharp pain in their heads, and their speed of escape slowed down. Following that, they saw 7 intersecting rainbow-colored light arcs. The light was so beautiful, but to them, it was the summons of death. The bodies of the gods stopped moving at the same time, and the moment the rainbow-colored light disappeared, their flesh and blood scattered in all directions. Under the interference of the spiritual power, the gods did not even have a chance. Their broken bodies were swallowed by the black cloud behind them, and under the intense corrosion, they turned into pools of blood. Nianbing floated down to the ground like a god. The surrounding barbarians were all stunned, looking at Nianbing in a daze. Nianbing looked around. They were surrounded by darkness. Most of them were humans, followed by dwarves. Only a small portion of them had wings and pointed ears like the woman with long emerald green hair. Most of them were holding short bows in their hands. They were the only barbarians who had weapons. It was a pity, although their arrows were very accurate, but previously, they were unable to break through the dou qi of the gods. Were these the survivors of the lost continent? Looking at them, Nianbing felt a sense of pity. At the same time, she felt a sense of loss. The physiques of these people were clearly much stronger than ordinary people. However, it would be a joke for them to defend against the gods' continent. The gazes of the savages gradually shifted from Nianbing to Yu Yu. When they saw Yu Yu's appearance, the dullness in their eyes gradually turned into fanaticism. First, the innermost person knelt down. Immediately after, like ripples in the water, they all knelt down. Their foreheads were all black. They seemed to be saying something, but their voices were indistinct due to their excitement. However, it was obviously different from the language of the Yangon continent. It was mainly reflected in the tone. From the pronunciation, it was barely understandable. They seemed to be saying something. The goddess had finally descended. "Oh goddess, please save us." Nianbing and Yu Yu looked at each other. Yu Yu looked at Nianbing, said, "Can you help me bury these dead people?" Nianbing nodded silently. He instructed the 7 shadow puppets to dig a hole in the wide, yellow ground beside them. Yu Yu looked at the kneeling savages on the ground, and a bitter smile appeared on her tender face. She sighed and said, "Get up, don't be like this. I don't even know what's going on. I'm not a goddess. I'm just an ordinary person." As soon as she said this, the savages suddenly became chaotic. All kinds of excited voices sounded continuously. Tens of thousands of people expressed their feelings. Suddenly, the scene became very chaotic. "Shut up," Nianbing shouted. He had previously killed those gods with a divine aura. At this time, he showed the effect of deterrence. The savages immediately calmed down. Their gazes were all focused on him. Nianbing said, "You all are so chaotic. How can we understand the situation? We are here to help you. Please choose a representative to talk to us." He also did not know if the savages could understand his words. So, he said every word very clearly. He also released his spiritual energy to express his goodwill. The savages discussed in low voices. After a while, the green-haired girl who caught Nianbing's attention walked out from the crowd. The savages all opened up a path for her to walk in front of Nianbing and Yu Yu. The girl walked in front of Yu Yu and bowed down. Yu Yu quickly supported her and said, "Don't be like this. Great goddess, you have finally arrived. Please save us. the last of your companions. Her voice had a soft feeling, although the intonation was hard to distinguish. As long as one listened carefully, they could understand what she meant. Yu Yu smiled bitterly. I am really not a goddess. I can't say that I will save you, but we are willing to help you. Are you the only people left in the lost continent? Do you have any records of the past? For example, some last words left behind by your seniors. The green-haired girl blankly shook her head and said, Is the lost continent you're talking about our sinful land? We only have a legend. Countless years ago, because we had blasphemed the gods, we were punished. The gods made us lose most of our water and food. The number of our seniors kept decreasing. If it was not because there was still one last source of water here, I am afraid we would have died long ago. And in the legend, there was a goddess who would come to save us. We have always been looking forward to it. You look just like that goddess. A few days ago, the sky here suddenly changed. The earth trembled and roared. We were very scared, thinking that the gods were going to punish us again. But at that time, we saw your miracle. Great goddess, you have finally come. I beg you, please save us. Speaking until here, tears kept flowing down her face. While trembling, the tattered clothes on her body were unable to cover her white skin. Nian Bing, who was at the side, was afraid that he saw something he should not see, so he turned his head away. At this time, no matter if it was Nian Bing or Yu Yu, their hearts were filled with a strange feeling. The legend of the green-haired girl said was completely different from what they knew about the lost continent. It seemed that the lost continent had not only left this world, but also lost their civilization. The green-haired girl's sadness came from her heart. From these savages' simple and somewhat foolish eyes, Nian Bing understood that they really did not know anything. Nian Bing's heart was filled with disappointment. It was not because these lost continent survivors who did not have much ability could not help him, but because of the lost civilization of the lost continent. A continent civilization had completely disappeared. Other than regret, he did not have any other feelings. At the same time, he also felt some sympathy for these savages in front of him. He secretly decided that he must help them escape from their suffering. At least, he could not let them suffer any more harm from the gods. Yu Yu looked at the green-haired girl. Her mood was similar to Nian Bing's. She softly said, All right, I understand your loss. How did you get into a conflict with those guys from before? The green-haired girl's eyes revealed grief and indignation. They came here not long ago. Seeing unfamiliar compatriots, we were originally very excited. However, those people only said a few words to us before they suddenly laughed out loud. 2 of them left. The remaining people immediately came to kill our companions. If it was not for the goddess and this hero who came in time, I'm afraid that many of our companions would have died. Yu Yu's face changed and said, You're saying that some of them left? As she said that, her gaze turned to Nian Bing. Nian Bing was also looking at her. He shook his head and said, There's no need to chase. Yu Yu, this may not be a bad thing. Rather than not knowing where the gods will attack from, it's better to fight them to the death here. At least we can start to prepare first. Yu Yu lowered her head and said, Thank you, but we can. Nian Bing interrupted Yu Yu's words and said, Now it's not a question of whether we can or not, but we must do this. I didn't expect that the gods would cause so much damage to the lost continent. I don't want to see the Yangon continent become the second lost continent. At this time, the 7 Dragon Kings and others had also arrived. When these survivors of the lost continent saw the giant dragon descending from the sky, it became impossible to convince them that Yu Yu was not a goddess. Just as Yu Yu told the Dragon King, Feng Nu and Kitty about what happened here, the girl who was talking to Yu Yu before walked to Nian Bing. She looked at him curiously and suddenly said loudly, Hero, let's mate. Silence. The whole place fell into silence. Nian Bing clearly felt Feng Nu's somewhat unkind gaze. He stuttered, Miss, are you talking to me? The green-haired girl didn't have the slightest shyness. Her voice was still very loud. Of course. Hero, you are so powerful. I think our children will be very healthy. Although I am from the elf clan and you are a human, but I think we should not be estranged. While speaking, she looked at Nian Bing with longing eyes. Not long after, Nian Bing found out that the survivors of the Lost Continent, in order to survive, as long as they were interested, the women would mate with the strongest men. Among them, because the elf clan's physique was the weakest, so when they reproduced, their numbers became the least. Nian Bing's handsome appearance and valiant strength won this elf girl's attention. However, Nian Bing didn't know this now. Feeling Feng Nu's piercing gaze, his heart contracted and he smiled bitterly. "Miss, don't joke. I don't seem to know you." The green-haired elf girl laughed heartily. "I'm the elf clan's Ningji. Now we know each other. Can we not discuss this problem?" Nian Bing said awkwardly. "Why?" Ningji blinked her big eyes at Nian Bing, her eyes showing a trace of puzzlement. Nian Bing was completely speechless. He turned his head to look at Feng Nu, using his eyes to ask for help. Feng Nu snorted and said, "Solve your own problems yourself. And it seems that your punishment needs to be extended. Seducing a girl again. I am innocent. If there was a river here, Nian Bing really wanted to jump into it and drown himself." Kitty giggled and came to Nian Bing's side and said, "Brother Nian Bing, what is mating? Is it very fun?" Nian Bing looked at Garamandes, who was rejoicing in his misfortune, and said, "Brother, do you have tofu? Give me a piece." Garamandes stared blankly and said, "What?" Nian Bing cried out in grief, "Kill me with tofu." Garamandes Nian Bing blinked and said, "What a good opportunity. Such a beautiful girl. Don't tell me you are not tempted." Okay, Garamandes, although I'm not a person who holds grudges, I will remember this grudge. I don't know how Shiwejing will feel if she knows that you're fooling around outside. This is Miss Ningji. This is my brother. He is much more capable than me and is most suitable for mating. Look, he is also a dragon king. Think about it. If you elves mate with dragons, the children born will definitely be healthier. Ningji's beautiful eyes lit up. That's right. It would also be good if I could mate with dragons. Hello, then let's mate. You will be the father of my 11th child. After saying that, she walked towards Garamandes. Nian Bing saw Garamandes' expression change greatly and said, "Brother, you see, I am so generous. I even gave you the beauty. Didn't you say you were tempted? Hurry up and seize the opportunity." All right, stop messing around. Miss, perhaps our customs are different, but they won't mate with you. Kajiasis finally couldn't stand it anymore and ended the farce. After everyone discussed, the 7 dragon kings, Kitty, Yu, and Heichao stayed behind. Nian Bing and Feng Nu rushed back to Ice Moon Lake. Since there were gods who escaped, then the army of the continent of gods would very likely come to this land in the near future. They must use the shortest time to react. While flying in the air, Nian Bing asked tentatively, "Feng Nu, are you still angry?" Feng Nu rolled her eyes and said, "Do I look like someone who gets angry easily?" No, of course not. Nian Bing subconsciously said the first word, but she realized that she said the wrong thing. Looking at Feng Nu's unkind expression, she quickly changed her words. Feng Nu snorted and said, "Do you want to be the father of that elf girl's 11th child? I think you want it very much." Nian Bing smiled apologetically and said, "How can I? With all of you around, why would I think about other women?" Feng Nu snorted and said, "Well, you explained to me in detail your relationship with Mu Jing and Luo Ro." "Oh, right, and Kitty." Nian Bing was stunned and said, "I have nothing to do with them. What is there to explain?" "Nothing to do with them? That's not right. Do you think we can't see it these days? The way Mu Jing and Luo Ro look at you is not right, especially that Mu Jing. When she secretly looks at you from the side, she looks like she wants to eat you. As for Kitty, although you say you treat her as a sister, but looking at her, I am afraid she will never leave you. You also promised to leave a place for Luo Ro and Mu Jing in the place where we live in seclusion in the future. Don't you need to explain this?" Nian Bing was speechless. Although he did not care about this, he had to admit that what Feng Nu said was true. He thought with grief and indignation. It seemed that his punishment would really be extended indefinitely. At this moment, his lips suddenly felt warm and soft. The sudden gentleness startled him. He subconsciously hugged Feng Nu and looked at her in surprise. "Fool, I'm joking with you." Feng Nu's eyes were full of smiles. Do you think I don't know what kind of person you are? These days, you have experienced too much. I can see that you are already very tired. No matter whether they're really interested in you or not, you just need to take care of yourself. We believe in you. Even if you really accept them, as long as you love me the most, I have no objections. Nian Bing was overjoyed. He kissed Feng Nu's lips back. Is what you said true? That's great. Feng Nu rolled her eyes at him and said, I just said a few good words to you. You immediately showed your true colors. I knew you already had evil intentions. I am innocent. No, I mean it's true that you're joking. I'm not interested in them. Feng Nu hugged Nian Bing and shook him, saying, Okay, no need to explain. Nian Bing, I really want to find a place with you to live in seclusion. We don't need to worry about these things. The ending of the Lost Continent is something we did not expect. Tell me, can we really fight against those gods? Nian Bing hugged Feng Nu's elastic body and said calmly, I also don't know. However, it is not completely impossible. Looking at it simply, although we have a lot of strong people on our side. However, this time, we have 600 magicians from the Ice Moon Empire. Among them, there are 100 elite magicians from the Ice God Tower. And those 1,000 fire magicians from the Huarong Empire may also be used by us. They were trained by the Rong family and have cooperated with each other for many years. Once they launch a group of magic, it is very terrifying. Many people think that the Order of the Fire Dragon of the Rong family is the most terrifying. In fact, they are wrong. The most terrifying thing of the Rong family is those 1,000 fire magicians. Although there are only a few magicians, and only my grandfather is the god-descending magician. However, under my grandfather's command, the attack power of these magicians is almost unimaginable. The Ottoman Empire and Longmu Empire also have some magicians. Luo Ro, Mu Jing, and I have discussed it. We will split them up and regroup them according to their respective magicians. We have a total of 2,500 magicians. It can be said that we have gathered the most outstanding magicians in the Yangon continent. With them, we can coordinate with the 2,000 elites of the Bloodline sect. I dare say that they are enough to fight against ordinary gods. Even demigods and gods may not be able to do anything to them. There is one thing you have to understand. There are only about 10,000 gods. Every time one of them dies, their power will weaken. The truly terrifying ones in the godly continent are the main gods. If it was before the Ice Valley, I could say that I had no confidence at all. However, now that my spiritual power has been liberated, if given the chance, I am confident that I can fight against one or two main gods. There may even be more. My advantage is spiritual power. That is something they do not have. I have a feeling that this battle will not be settled in one go. I am afraid that it will take a long time. The Huarong Empire, other than the 2 night regiments, has also transported 50,000 elite troops from the sea. In addition to the troops from our 3 countries, we should have a total of 200,000 troops. Although these troops are not enough to fight against the gods, they can at least delay them. We have many magicians on our side. With our combined strength, we can prevent the gods from launching large-scale destructive attacks. As long as there is enough time for me to use my spiritual power, we can slowly wear them down. Feng Nu's expression changed slightly. No wonder you invited the 4 countries to reclaim this land. So you had this plan? Won't the 200,000 troops become cannon fodder? Her gaze gradually became angry. She did not expect Nian Bing to be using them. Nian Bing's eyes flashed coldly. I do not want to do this either. However, this is our only chance. Do you want to see the millions of lives in the Yangon continent suffer? Do you want to see the Yangon continent become like the Lost Continent? For the future of the Yangon continent, sacrifices are unavoidable. At the critical moment, I am even willing to sacrifice myself. Of the 8 main gods, 1 is dead and 1 is seriously injured. The dragon god will not take their side. However, there are still 5 main gods on their side. Any one of them will bring us great trouble. They can even easily destroy a city. How many people are there in a city on the Yangon continent? Can you tell me? Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing's firm gaze, and the anger in her heart gradually disappeared. Nian Bing was right. Although his approach was cruel, it was indeed the only way. Now, the biggest disadvantage of the gods was that they were not flexible. Only a direct battle would be more advantageous to the Yangon continent. Otherwise, with so many gods, if they were scattered on the Yangon continent, then the whole continent would become a disaster. However, in her heart, she still found it difficult to accept Nian Bing's idea. Nian Bing sighed and continued, I have carefully calculated those who could be considered strong on our side are you, me, Chun Shun, and Linger can barely be considered as one. My father-in-law Long Ji, mother, father, the 7 Dragon King brothers, Halogen brothers, you use strength, I'm not sure, but should be considered as one. Kitty's pets are also not bad, plus my grandfather. In total, these are all. In a direct battle, all of us together may not be able to deal with the 5 main gods. If we don't use some special methods, we won't even have a chance. Perhaps you will think that my method is somewhat inappropriate, but this is the best method I can think of. Perhaps I will need to use some irregular methods. Feng Nu bit her lower lip and said, Do the Dragon King know your idea? Nian Bing nodded solemnly and said, In the past few months, I've already discussed with them, and I have also thought of various possibilities. Brother Kageyoshi even consulted the dragon god. In the end, we all understood that this method is the most likely to succeed. All we can do is to try our best to avoid losses. For the sake of more people's lives, we must pay the price. Feng Nu said, Then what about the 3 true gods you mentioned? What if they also participate in this war? Nian Bing said without hesitation, If they also participate in this war, I will let everyone immediately return to the Yangon continent. However, I don't think that kind of situation will appear. They had reached their level. They already have no desires. Moreover, even if they really appear, there are people who can deal with them. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but think of the sisters who had completely opposite auras but looked exactly the same. He didn't know if Cao and Tian Xiang had found a way to fuse the 2 different auras of life and death. Only they could compete with the 3 true gods. Feng Nu looked deeply at Nian Bing. No matter what decision you make, you must take me with you. This time, don't abandon me again. Okay. Nian Bing stroked Feng Nu's soft long hair and said, I have never abandoned you. I said it. In my heart, no one can replace your position. This time is different. For the sake of the Yangon continent, we must concentrate all our strength. Feng Nu, if we really have to die, let's all die together. I have always thought that. That is also a kind of happiness. Now, the lives of more than 200,000 people and ourselves are in the hands of God. Let us gamble and see what our fate is. Feng Nu looked deeply at Nian Bing and said, Then let's gamble. As long as I am with you, I will accompany you no matter how big the gamble is. A dark cloud drifted from the distance, bringing a bit of chill to the warm land. When the dark cloud blocked the sun, the chill became more intense. The Yangon continent had already entered the warm spring. The position of the Lost Continent was almost parallel to the Yangon continent. Looking at the rolling dark clouds in the sky, Nian Bing smiled and said, The spring rain is coming. Let fully nourish this land. Perhaps in a few years, the Lost Continent will gradually develop. Although the original race here has declined, it has come back after all. Unfortunately, I forgot to set up a space transmission point on the other side of the frozen moon lake. Otherwise, we would not have to fly such a long distance. I have already set up a transmission array in the place of those survivors. When we come back, it will be much easier. Feng Nu couldn't hide the worry between her eyebrows. She sighed and said, Nian Bing, we haven't been alone together for a long time. Do you still remember the scene when we first met? Nian Bing smiled and said, Of course I remember. At that time, your appetite really shocked me. If I remember correctly, I made pigeon meat rice for you that time. Feng Nu nodded and said, Yes, it was really delicious. The food you make is the most delicious thing I have ever eaten. When we go into seclusion in the future, you have to cook for me every day. A bright light streaked across the sky. Lightning lit up the surrounding space for a moment. Then, a clap of thunder sounded. Fine raindrops floated down. Under the breeze, the raindrops filled the space between heaven and earth. A faint seven-colored light curtain rose from Yin Bing's body, isolating the raindrops from her body. Looking at the drops of crystal-clear raindrops, he hugged Feng Nu's delicate body tightly. I also hope to go into seclusion with you as soon as possible. Having you with me is my greatest happiness. Dad, Mom has returned safely. When we go into seclusion, let's go to the Peach Blossom Forest. Peach Blossom Forest? What's that place? Feng Nu asked. Yin Bing's eyes showed deep emotions. It's the place where I lived for 8 years. At that time, my parents were sealed by the ice goddess priests. I jumped into the river to escape. It was Master who saved me. Master lived in that peach blossom forest. There, I learned cooking from Master for 8 years. Master is my benefactor. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid I would have died long ago. Fallen leaves return to their roots. The Rome family is not my root, but the peach blossom forest is. When I left, I burned that place to the ground. When we go back, I want to rebuild that place. I think if Master has a soul, he will be happy to see us living happily. He will definitely be very happy. In Yin Bing's heart, the person he was most grateful to in his life was Jia Ji. Jia Ji brought him to the highest realm of cooking. At the same time, he also gave him a new life. Feng Nu pointed to the front and said, "Look, we're in the ruins again." Yin Bing looked in the direction of Feng Nu's finger. Large pieces of broken stones were spread over hundreds of square kilometers below. Scattered stones and faintly discernible stone walls were everywhere. They could vaguely see that this place used to be a city. From those stone walls that were not completely damaged, the city walls were at least 20 or 30 meters high. Obviously, it used to be a big city. Unfortunately, in this big city, there was no longer any sign of life in the area. When they were looking for the survivors, they had passed by here. At that time, they deliberately went down to look for records of the lost continent. However, except for stones, they almost didn't find anything useful. Even simple carvings didn't exist. It's a pity that this is just a ruin. It's ridiculous. When I came back from the lost continent, I was always worried that the strength of this continent was too strong, but now I feel the opposite. Feng Nu looked up at Yin Bing and suddenly said, "Let's go down to take shelter from the rain, okay?" Yin Bing was stunned. With their strength, why would they need to take shelter from the rain? But looking at Feng Nu's hopeful eyes, he really couldn't bear to refuse. Since returning from the godly continent, he hadn't been able to be alone with Feng Nu. Without saying anything, he nodded and floated down to the ruins. The ruins full of stones were shrouded in a dead silence. The two quickly found a place that seemed to be a stone house. Although only half of it was left, it was enough to take shelter from the rain. Chapter 229. The rain fell, bringing with it a rustling sound. Feng Nu nestled in Yin Bing's arms and looked at the raindrops falling outside. Her eyes showed a trace of gentleness. How wonderful it would be if I could watch it with you every time it rains. Yin Bing, hold me tight, will you? I'm a little cold. Yin Bing hugged Feng Nu tightly. At this time, he naturally would not say anything that would ruin the atmosphere. Feng Nu's delicate body was unusually warm and soft, and the faint virgin fragrance constantly stimulated his sense of smell. But at this time, there was only a strong love in his heart, and not the slightest desire. He also wanted to stay peacefully with Feng Nu like this until the end of time. The rain continued to fall. Spring rain had always been known for its incessant rain. The rain was not very heavy, and a curtain of water kept washing this desolate continent. Yin Bing remembered the seeds he had scattered. Under the nourishment of the rain, they should have sprouted. With the emergence of plants, the vitality of this continent would become stronger and stronger, which was what he wanted to see the most. The two people hugged each other and watched the rain. They forgot about the time, as if only a moment had passed in less than half an hour, but also as if a century had passed. Yin Bing, do you know why I asked you to come down with me? Feng Nu looked up at her lover. Yin Bing stroked her long hair and said with a smile, "Of course I know. Perhaps this is the only chance for us to be alone for a while before the war. Let's stay here until the rain stops." Feng Nu sighed softly. "Aren't you afraid of delaying the time?" Yin Bing shook his head and said, "In my heart, No matter how important something is, it is not as important as your love for me. What's more, the time of the rain doesn't mean anything. No matter how fast those gods were, it was impossible for them to kill their way to the place where the survivors were located without 10 days. I have calculated carefully. That place is 3 days away from our ice moon lake. It will take at least 5 days to fly to the gods' mainland. This was calculated based on my flying speed. Of course, there are some gods who are stronger than me, but most of them aren't as fast as me. No matter how fast I am, it'll still take me 10 days. 10 days is more than enough for us to make preparations. Don't talk anymore. Let's finish watching this rain. I like this feeling very much. Feng Nu clung to Nian Bing's chest and suddenly burst into laughter. Hero, let's mate. Nian Bing was taken aback. She smiled bitterly and said, You still haven't forgotten? I really didn't know that elven girls would be so passionate. Don't embarrass me. Feng Nu blushed and said, Silly. I'm serious. Nian Bing's body trembled slightly. Feng Nu. At this time, his heart was full of deep affection. He certainly understood why Feng Nu said this. She didn't want to leave a trace of regret before the war. Feng Nu looked up at him and said with a chuckle, Hero, let's mate. She looked at Nian Bing. Although she was a little shy, her voice was firm. In Feng Nu's heart, she was not optimistic about the confrontation with the gods. However, the war was inevitable. Before the war came, she wanted to give herself to the person she loved the most. The matter of the Feng people had been solved. She was willing to give herself completely to Nian Bing. Even if she died in the final war, she would not have any regrets. Love needed to be sublimated. Only when the soul and desire were completely merged could they fully understand each other's true love. Nian Bing looked at Feng Nu in a daze. Feng Nu was also looking at him. Gradually, Feng Nu closed her eyes. She pulled Nian Bing's big hands and placed them on her burning face. So beautiful. She was really beautiful. He lowered his head. When he kissed those soft and moist lips, with a bang, a scorching flame was ignited. The kiss turned into a deep and passionate kiss. Nian Bing hugged Feng Nu's arm even more tightly. Feng Nu abandoned all her reservations and responded passionately. She knew that at this moment, Nian Bing completely belonged to her. Oscar, who was in one body with Nian Bing, was ready to watch a good show. He suddenly realized that his perception of the outside world had disappeared. He could not help but curse. Damn you, Nian Bing. Even at this time, you still can't forget to seal me. A thick feeling of spring continued to rise in this half-stone house. Nian Bing's robe was already spread out on the ground. A rainbow-colored halo wrapped around their bodies like a large cocoon. Feng Nu's entire body was beautiful. That fair and slightly rosy skin, those slender and smooth thighs, those full and full breasts, and that mysterious virgin place. Although Feng Nu and Lan Shun were sisters, they gave Nian Bing two completely different feelings. When she was with Lan Shun, Nian Bing felt like she was melting an iceberg. But when she was with Feng Nu, Nian Bing found that she was melted by her. The feelings that had been accumulated for many years exploded at this moment. The two completely opened their hearts, completely opening themselves to each other. Deep love and desire condensed in the depths of their souls. When they became one with Feng Nu's tender moans, a strong sense of satisfaction filled their bodies and minds. Pain seemed to have become unimportant. They hugged each other tightly, as if they wanted to fuse with each other. After many days, Nian Bing's nervous nerves had relaxed. At this moment, he had forgotten everything. He constantly probed her in the midst of one sprint after another. At the beginning, he was still afraid of hurting his lover. However, when his lover under him wildly catered to him, when that elastic and tender body tightly locked around his body reacted crazily, reason was thrown to the back of his mind. In a crazy sprint, they welcomed one peak after another together. Their feelings were sublimated by the union of their spiritual desires. Their hearts were intimately connected with each other. What they offered was the essence of each other's lives. When the spring rain gradually thinned with the passing of the dark clouds, and the sound of the rain fell, the spring rain in the stone house gradually stopped. Feng Nu lay in Nian Bing's arms, constantly gasping for breath. Her delicate skin exuded a layer of alluring red. For the first time, her heart trembled slightly. She was a girl after all. At this moment, other than feeling satisfied, she couldn't help but feel a little shy. Looking at the gradually stopping rain outside, Nian Bing was exceptionally satisfied. Looking at the scattered clothes on the ground, he suddenly thought of bringing a blanket in the space ring next time. No, it definitely wasn't enough. He should bring 3 blankets. The union in the rain had a different feeling, although it was Feng Nu's first time. But her passion almost made her melt, especially since she had cultivated martial arts since she was young. Her physical strength was much better than Bing Yun's. Fortunately, her body had been transformed several times, and there was a huge amount of life force supporting her. Otherwise, she was afraid that the first one to lose her armor would be her. "We should go," Feng Nu murmured in Nian Bing's arms. How could she bear to let go of this feeling? But she knew that it was time to leave. You should rest for a while. Can you still walk now?" Nian Bing chuckled, stroking Feng Nu's back and buttocks. He was reluctant to part with his wife's beauty. Feng Nu said slightly angrily, "I want you to carry me. I really wonder if you're a magician or a martial artist." She was greatly satisfied. Now, she finally understood why her sister would moan so intensely when she was with Nian Bing. She even regretted it a little. She regretted that everything between her and Nian Bing had come too late. Nian Bing laughed and said, "You seem to be more enthusiastic than me just now. Ah, look, it's a rainbow." His voice was full of surprise and a little joy. Feng Nu raised her head and saw the infatuated light in Nian Bing's eyes. Following his gaze, she saw a 7-colored rainbow across the sky. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. The 7 colors were distinct. Under the sunlight that reappeared, it looked so charming. "Carry me up. Let's go out and see, okay?" After a long period of violent wind and rain, she really didn't have the strength to walk now. Nian Bing hugged Feng Nu's delicate body and stood up. He first put on his clothes, then took a robe and carefully put on her body, lest she be attacked by the cold after the rain. Feng Nu hugged his neck, put her face on his solid chest, and listened to the sound of his heartbeat. Nian Bing picked up Feng Nu's thigh, picked her up, kissed her lips, and then walked out of the stone house. After the rain, the air was mixed with the fragrance of the earth. It was particularly fresh to breathe, and the rainbow became more gorgeous. As soon as he walked out of the stone house, Nian Bing suddenly felt that there seemed to be some strange changes in the surroundings. In addition to the rainbow, there seemed to be a faint red light floating not far away. With a thought, he carried Feng Nu and flew up with the help of the wind element. Looking down from the sky, the red light became more obvious. When looking carefully, he could see that the red light was coming from a steeple in the middle of the ruins. Because of the weathering, the building was already crooked and it could collapse at any time. Feng Nu's body suddenly became boiling hot, and she whispered, "Nian Bing, quickly when we go there. It seems like something is calling me." Nian Bing's eyes flashed, and his right hand pressed the air, and rich Xiantian qi mixed with elements surged from the building. With a rumbling sound, the steeple was pushed down, and the originally dense red light suddenly became more intense. The light soared into the sky, and the rainbow in the sky shone brightly. Feng Nu's eyes lit up, and she suddenly broke free from Nian Bing's arms. The Feng people's royal feathers floated out, and the golden red wings quickly carried her towards the rising red light. Nian Bing was afraid that she would lose her and hurriedly followed. When they arrived at the top of the red light, they could clearly see that on the ground where the steeple was originally, there was a red pattern. It was actually a pattern of a phoenix, and the fiery red light was dense. The phoenix seemed to be alive, and it was emitting a faint heat. Nian Bing and the others had seen this steeple when they first came here. Because the steeple could collapse at any time, Nian Bing used his spiritual power to check the interior. At that time, he didn't find anything in the steeple, and the ground didn't have any changes. But why did this pattern of a phoenix suddenly appear? The two floated down, and when they entered the red light, Nian Bing's strange feeling became more obvious. It was clearly a kind of energy, and although it wasn't very strong, it really existed. Feng Nu's body shone brightly, and when her body merged with the rising phoenix light, a deep voice slowly sounded. "Great Phoenix, I welcome your return." With a creaking sound, the ground actually split open and a flight of stairs extended downwards. A mist floated out from the passageway below. Nian Bing hurriedly pulled Feng Nu to the side and urged the light attribute innate qi to enter the passageway and cleanse the moldy air. Light and warmth were brought into the deep passageway. With the light elements cleansing, the moldy air was quickly evaporated, and in a short while, the air was fresh again. "What was that sound just now?" Nian Bing asked suspiciously. There are no longer any people in the Lost Continent, but the sound just now was very clear, and in the sound there was a bit of majesty. Feng Nu shook her head and said, "I also don't know. That sound seemed to be left behind by magic." Nian Bing, do you still remember when we obtained the ancestor Phoenix's memories on the Phoenix volcano? The ancestor said that he was once the god of the Lost Continent, and his image was the totem of the Lost Continent. Maybe it was the phoenix blood in my body that triggered the mechanism here, and the appearance of the rainbow was the reason why the energy here was released. It seems that we have found the real historical remains of the Lost Continent. Speaking until here, her eyes were filled with curiosity and also some excitement. Both of their eyes revealed a trace of joy, and when the moldy air was no longer coming, Feng Nu used her wings to fly and continued to walk downwards with Nian Bing. The stone steps were very long, and after descending for no less than 100 meters, they finally reached the end. The darkness in the passageway did not affect them at all. Nian Bing's light attribute magic showed its due power, and a simple illumination spell illuminated the surroundings abnormally bright. The stone walls on both sides of the passageway were very smooth, and it was obvious that they were man-made, although there was a bit of moldy air coming out, but overall, the passageway was still considered dry. When they reached the deepest part of the passageway, a huge door appeared in front of them. There was a circular pattern on the door, and within that protruding circle, there was a lifelike phoenix. What surprised them was that the phoenix pattern was actually inlaid with a ruby, and the ruby did not have any gaps, as if it was carved with a large piece of ruby before being inlaid. A faint red light shone. That was the energy of fire, but within the fire, there was also a bit of coolness. The phoenix totem verified the thoughts in Nian Bing and Feng Nu's mind, and the two of them stopped in front of the door. Nian Bing tried to push with her hand, but the stone door did not move at all. She tried to use her spiritual power to probe inside, but was blocked by a gentle energy and could not go in. Nian Bing frowned slightly and muttered to himself, "This door is very strange. Feng Nu, did you discover anything?" As she said that, she turned around to look at Feng Nu. When she saw Feng Nu, she discovered that Feng Nu's eyes were focused on the ruby phoenix pattern on the stone door. Her eyes revealed a contemplative light, as if she did not hear Nian Bing's question. The Wind Maiden's robe fell, revealing her perfect body, and a faint red light surrounded her skin. Her eyes lit up, and the royal feathers behind her spread out to both sides, and her body floated up, arriving in front of the stone door. She raised her hand and gently stroked the ruby pattern as deep emotions appeared in her eyes. The faint red light gradually turned golden, and as she stroked, it gradually merged with the ruby. The ruby's light grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly, the phoenix's eyes lit up, and with a flash of light, it just happened to meet Feng Nu's eyes. Feng Nu's body became sluggish for a moment, and immediately after, a clear phoenix cry rang out from Feng Nu's mouth. The red light around her body became more and more intense, and the scorching air forced Nian Bing to retreat. Only by releasing his Heaven's Eye domain could he not be affected by the phoenix's flames. Feng Nu's body was rapidly changing, and Nian Bing could vaguely sense a dignified aura emanating from Feng Nu's body. When the clear phoenix cry disappeared, the red light instantly disappeared, and Feng Nu's figure became clear again. She was a fiery red phoenix, and every feather on her body was as clear as a ruby. She had a pair of dignified red eyes, and the feathers on her body were as if they were carved from ruby. They shone with a resplendent light. Nian Bing whispered, 8 Phoenix transformations, Phoenix awakening, Phoenix transformation. Yes, at this time, Feng Nu had once again used the 8 transformations. Nian Bing suddenly realized that Feng Nu, who had completed the 8 transformations, was strangely similar to the phoenix pattern on the stone door. Just as he was thinking about the changes, the red phoenix flew up. It actually accelerated in a short distance and directly rushed towards the stone door. Without waiting for Nian Bing to cry out in alarm, the phoenix that Feng Nu had transformed into actually merged into the stone door. The red light instantly blossomed with an even more dazzling brilliance, and the entire passageway seemed to tremble slightly. Immediately after, the huge stone door in front of them, along with the radiance, actually gradually rose up. With a rumbling sound, a scorching heat was released from the stone door. Nian Bing looked at everything in front of him in astonishment. He hurriedly took a few steps forward and walked towards the door. When he saw the full appearance of the rising stone door, he finally understood why he couldn't open it. The thickness of this stone door was completely beyond his imagination. It actually extended for a distance of nearly 10 feet. Furthermore, from the magical aura that was emitted from the stone door, this huge gate definitely contained a magical seal. Passing through the passageway formed by the gate, Nian Bing arrived inside. The first thing he saw was the totem that was shining with a golden light on the ground. This was a spacious square stone room, about 3 feet long on each side. In the center of the stone room, there was a huge phoenix statue that was completely carved out of red gemstones, shining with a dazzling brilliance. Yes, it was completely a piece of sparkling and translucent red gemstone. The phoenix was in the posture of flapping its wings, and the phoenix's eyes were inlaid with 2 pieces of golden gemstones. The fiery aura was emitted from this statue. Feng Nu didn't appear in the stone room. Ling Nian Bing felt a little uneasy in his heart and couldn't help but call out loudly, "Feng Nu, where are you? What exactly is this place?" Suddenly, a surge of heat came from the totem below Nian Bing's feet. Nian Bing's Heaven's Eye domain was actually unable to weaken this heat aura, forcing him to retreat from the totem's range. An illusory figure lit up from the golden pattern. A holy heat filled the entire stone room. This rising figure was the phoenix that Feng Nu had transformed into. From the beginning of the illusory path to gradually condensing into a solid body, it took an entire cup of tea's time. When she finally completely appeared, Nian Bing let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the low voice from outside sounded again. "Oh, great Phoenix, you finally returned. This day, we've been waiting for too long. It's a pity that we, the subjects of the Lost Continent, are unable to escape the arrangement of fate. Perhaps you've come too late." Feng Nu once again transformed back into her human form. Looking at the huge phoenix statue in front of her, 2 streams of tears flowed down her face. From that low voice, she could feel a sense of true sorrow. That low voice continued, "What you're hearing now is the memories we left behind before our final destruction. Although I'm also about to die, I want to leave behind my feelings. Only when your energy appears can you hear my voice. As the last ruler of the Lost Continent, I've failed. However, I'm unwilling to admit my failure. I haven't done anything wrong. The Lost Continent has always been fighting for itself. However, in the end, I still lost. I lost to fate. I know that you've already done your best. However, just as we were about to win, those terrifying existences appeared. They forced us to leave our original world. I left the curse in the Yangon continent. Although we lost due to the participation of those terrifying existences, I feel that one day we will return. Because we belong to our own world, while those terrifying existences don't. Moreover, we've already found some information regarding them. We've even found some prehistoric superweapons. Perhaps only those weapons can destroy them. Although the Lost Continent has been sent to another space, I don't regret it. For freedom, I'm willing to give up everything. My subjects are also willing. Did they think that by cutting us off to another world, they could make us lose our faith? That's impossible. I firmly believe that Lord Phoenix has not died. One day in the future, you will definitely lead us back to our world. Not only will we obtain freedom, but we will also destroy those terrifying existences. In front of my subjects, I swear in my name, Luther 17, that one day we will return. Return to our world and obtain everything that we deserve. Luther 17. Hearing these 5 words, Nian Bing's heart trembled. She finally knew who left behind these last words. That was the final ruler of the Lost Continent, who had presided over the final battle between the Lost Continent and the Godly Continent. Unfortunately, in the battle against the powerless true gods, the Lost Continent was forcefully separated from this world and sent to another space. The terrifying existences that he was talking about were clearly those 3 true gods. Luther XVI's voice was so passionate. Although this was only his voice, Nian Bing could still feel the intense battle in his heart. The passionate voice disappeared, and the stone room fell into a short silence. After a long while, a deep and dignified voice let out a long sigh. In this sigh, there were too many things. There was anger, sadness, and also deep unwillingness. Lord Phoenix, if everything goes according to my plan, then, even if I die, my descendants will lead the Lost Continent to the Godly Continent. My descendants will definitely lead the army of the Lost Continent to raise the Godly Continent to the ground. We will eliminate the enemies that restrict our freedom and let the light of dawn return to the earth. In the curse that I left behind, there is a desire that can arouse the desire of humans. That curse requires the Dark Saintess to guide it. The night can be said to be my scheme. As long as we really return, becoming the ruler of the Lost Continent is just a joke. The one who truly benefits from the curse is actually only the Dark Saintess. However, it is impossible for her to become the ruler of the Lost Continent. Only the successor of my Luther family can become the ruler of this continent. However, just when I was filled with confidence, I found out that I was wrong about one thing. That was the judgment of those terrifying existences. That's right. How could they allow existences that could threaten them in the future to appear? When we were exiled to another space, while I was filled with confidence and prepared to lead the Lost Continent's people to develop again, they brought us disaster. They used their powerful destructive power to restrict us, changed our environment, and destroyed everything that could threaten them, including our army and my people. Right now, they're constantly destroying outside. What they want to destroy is not the lives of the Lost Continent's people, but the civilization of the Lost Continent. They use their own abilities to continuously destroy and change the order of the Lost Continent. Just now, I was able to escape here under the protection of my subordinates. However, I know that they will not let me live. The civilization of the Lost Continent has already been destroyed. Right now, all I can do is to leave my people with the last bit of hope. I have changed the curse that I left behind in the Yangon continent. If the Lost Continent can really return to our original world, then let the Dark Saintess become the ruler of my remaining people. Those terrifying existences will not leave us with any civilization. I have always thought that I am very smart, I have ambition, I have means. However, in front of their true destructive power, I find that I am so small. Lord Phoenix, I don't know if you can hear my voice. However, if you can really hear it, I, Luther 17, only have one request. Please treat my people well. Even if they have already forgotten the existence of the Lost Empire because of the destruction of their civilization, please treat them well. Those terrifying existences are not something that we can fight against. I only hope that the bloodline of the Lost Empire can continue to be passed down. Lord Phoenix, don't make unnecessary sacrifices. It is useless. I'm going. Even if I die, I will walk out bravely. Lord Phoenix, you are the totem of the Lost Empire. Even if the Lost Empire is truly destroyed, this will never change. Farewell, our civilization. Sadness, deep sadness filled the entire room. Everything around them became somewhat unreal. At this moment, Nian Bing understood everything. The real reason for the destruction of the Lost Empire civilization was not the environment of the alternate space. It came from the three true gods who were respectively known as the God of Destruction, the God of Order, and the God of Time. On the surface, they only said that they were banishing the Lost Continent. However, when they sent the Lost Continent into the alternate space and claimed that they were cultivating in a deep sleep, they came to the Lost Continent and completely destroyed everything that could threaten them. Not only did they destroy everything left behind from prehistoric times, but they also destroyed the entire civilization of the Lost Continent. What a ruthless method, what a scheme. Perhaps even Kao and Amaterasu did not know that they had secretly done so many things. True gods, they were indeed true gods. No wonder they did not care about the opening of Miordas's seal. It turned out that everything was already under their control. What else did they need to care about? The return of the Lost Continent to this world was just one more piece of land. That was all. The prehistoric civilization that could threaten them no longer existed. The Lost Empire also no longer existed. A light tinkling sound woke Nian Bing up from his grief and anger. He was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the chest of the ruby phoenix statue in front of him. With a fine rustling sound, the crack gradually expanded. The light in the phoenix statue's golden eyes gradually dimmed. Feng Nu did not know when he had knelt on the ground. He looked at the statue in front of him in a daze. When the cracks covered the entire body of the phoenix statue, with a bang, the statue completely shattered. The ruby no longer had its dazzling light. Luther XVI's voice was clearly stored in this statue. He was not only a great ruler, but also a great magician. Such a clever design. Even Yin Bing could not help but sigh at his own inferiority. It was a pity that the era of the Lost Empire had completely ended. Luther 17 did not manage to fulfill his wish and walked towards his death. A heart-shaped gem attracted Yin Bing's attention. When the statue was completely destroyed, only this gem was suspended in the center of the statue. The gem's light was very strange. It actually shone with two colors. One moment it shone with red light, the next moment it shone with blue light. It did not bring about any changes to the surroundings. However, Nian Bing could clearly feel that this gem contained an incomparably large amount of energy. What is this? Questions arose in his heart. At this moment, that heart-shaped gem suddenly moved. It floated lightly in front of Feng Nu and landed in her hand.